Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Sunday evening edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular, of course. I hope he can hear me. Russell, can you hear me?
Hello.
You can hear me? All right, good. I got this new arm for my microphone stand. I don't have to use my stand anymore. Now I could sit back and take it easy like Russ has been doing all these years. It's very luxurious having this arm.
I couldn't believe it when you told me that.
Well, because it's nice to have the
especially because you see me with an arm. How did that not occur to you?
Well, I mean, don't take this the wrong way, but you know, you're not exactly a role model in all contexts, especially with the microphone. Yeah. So I was a little nervous.
Well, sure, but I mean, the arm has nothing to do with the mic. I didn't say, well, if you saw me with that brand of mic, why didn't you use it? It's a freaking arm. Why would you not use it?
Well, I have some flexibility with this. Like sometimes if my kid starts screaming, I would move my mic from one end of the table to the other and angle it a certain way. But I have flexibility with this. This should be able to work. And knock on wood, the kids won't be screaming tonight. It is nighttime. It is their bedtime. It was my wife Amanda's and I's 10th wedding anniversary. We both got each other the same gift. It's like a gift of the Magi story. We didn't know. We each got ourselves, because the theme of the 10-year anniversary is aluminum, tin, or diamond. But diamond is out of both of our price range, so we went with aluminum or tin. So I got this little family tin doll on a bench thing. That's the one she got for me. The one I got for her is in our room. But we both got each other the same gift, so that's how you know we were meant for each other. So, yeah, we had a good time. Russell had his walking tour both nights, so that was a success. Thanks to everybody who tuned in yesterday night.
Thanks to everybody who came. I should have grabbed some of the pictures.
Oh.
I was in such a rush.
Yeah.
We'll do it Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll do it Tuesday. Why not? That's the day after St. Patty's Day. Good crowd in here tonight, 967 strong in the YouTube chat, 633 strong on the Rumble chat. So, folks, you may have noticed, I'm sure some of you guys noticed, that in the thumbnail there's one story that's glaringly absent in both the thumbnail and the title, and that is, of course, the big news of the day, which is the bombing of Yemen. We are going to Rumble for the final two segments of the night. We're doing a story about Syria and a story about Yemen on the Rumble side of things before the Q&A. Our friend Caleb Maupin was just censored and demonetized permanently by YouTube for talking about Yemen in a way that they did not approve. And if he is not allowed to say what he said, there is no point in covering that story here on the YouTube side. It's really unfortunate. It's really terrible. I hate seeing anybody get censored. This was probably the most egregious example of censorship in a long list of very egregious examples that I've seen in recent years. And so we are going to be doing a lot more Rumble switches from here going forward, because especially when it comes to Yemen, you know, this could be the start of the war with Iran that clearly the Adelsons want and Trump seems determined to give them. And if we're not able to talk about certain subjects the right way, then we're just not going to talk about them here. You know, we've said this over and over again. We have begged our peers over and over again, set yourselves up on free speech platforms. We have to build free speech media infrastructure, both on the audience, both on the creator side and the audience side. And so moving forward, there's going to be a lot of split streams. Rumble is starting this thing on the 24th where they're doing a rollout where it's going to be a TV-style lineup where they're going to have a couple of the old Bongino guys from his show, Steven Crowder, Tim Pool, Russell Brand, The Quartering, and Viva Free, which talk about a nightmare blunt rotation, right? But that's not the point. The point is, you know, when the right started getting censored in 2020 and 2021 between COVID and January 6th, what did the libs tell them? Well, if you don't like it, go build your own YouTube. And so they did. And that's what Rumble is now. Now, Rumble remains not a right-wing platform.
Now,
free
I'm
speech
not
platform.
sure if I can do this myself, but
Yeah,
I
right,
saw
exactly.
a lady do it in Vietnam. Gonna
Yeah.
just get me legs up here.
Yeah, right.
Trying to hit the target with the legs.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, that's what they've done. And, you know, Rumble remains a free speech platform. The culture there is more right of center because that's who populated the platform when conservatives are being censored. But I've said this over and over and over again. Lefties in our space have to start populating these free speech platforms like Rumble and like Substack. And so we are going to be doing a lot more split streams. There will be a lot of content that's just not going to be here. If they're not going to let us talk about this in an honest way, which, like I said, if Caleb couldn't say what he said, there's no point in us even covering this. There's no point even talking about it if you can't. You know, everybody has to play cute. You know, Jimmy, with the COVID stuff, you got to put certain disclaimers in, and we have to put certain disclaimers in, but with something
Safe and
as
effective,
basic,
baby.
Exactly. But with something as basic as this, I really feel like there's no way to honestly cover it without just switching venues. That's all. And that's what we're going to have to do. Now, moving forward, we're still going to stream to YouTube. We're not making any
They
policy
said, Donald,
changes.
I
Yeah.
don't think you could start World War III in less than 2 months.
Yeah.
I started it in 6 weeks.
Yeah, started it in 6 weeks. Yeah, exactly. You know, there's not going to be any policy changes here at the show. And so, like, we'll still stream to YouTube when we can, as often as possible. But there are going to be quite a few streams that are split. And so, starting this week, one new perk of paid membership is we will be uploading the entire live stream, both the YouTube and the Rumble section, to a personal use Rumble link, meaning an ad-free Rumble link, and all of our paid members will get an ad-free full-length video version of the stream emailed to you the next day. Because a lot of our full streams are going to be on Rumble only now. YouTube will only be the partial stream. Not all, but a lot. And we know Rumble has the ads going every 6 minutes, and a lot of people don't like that, understandably, over the course of a 3-hour stream. That can be a lot. So we're adding as a perk of membership, we are going to be uploading the full-length show ad-free on a private, unlisted Rumble link, which you'll have access to as a paid member the day after all of our streams. So in case you missed something here and you're worried about not getting the full version on YouTube or having to sit through, 55 ads over the course of a 3-hour stream on Rumble, paid members is a nice perk of membership for just $5 a month. In addition to everything else you'll get, you will get an ad-free version of each stream. But it is absolutely imperative that we start building out a free speech media infrastructure, because it's going to get much, much worse, I think, in a very short order of time, both on the big tech side and on the government side. You know, these people do not respect free speech. These people are anti-free speech. I almost said full stop. I caught myself. I know that's the house rule.
Yeah,
no
yeah,
full stop,
yeah.
but they are.
You know what? I'm glad you reminded me, because we had some British people be like, "That's just like saying period." I know. I didn't mean British people.
Yeah.
American people
Americans. Yeah.
who say full stop, those are the most pretentious, smack me motherfuckers that you are ever going to meet. So, yes, I understand with England, you come by it honestly.
Right.
The Americans who steal it, they are the most obnoxious people you can imagine.
Exactly. And I just caught myself just in the nick of time. So anyway, that's the announcement. By the way, we will have Caleb on the show on Thursday as part of the Rumble exclusive part of the show. So he's going to be on the show on Thursday. And we'll have more to say about this, obviously, after the switch. But for now, that's what we've got. So why don't we get started We got a big crowd in here tonight, 1,300 strong in the YouTube chat, 932 in the Rumble chat. What a crowd. Smash that like button wherever you are. Smash that follow button. Smash that subscribe button over on YouTube. And give a round of applause for Jake, who is, of course, here in the booth with us tonight. All right. That brings us ready to start the show. So we're going to start out doing a really tame segment. See, back when the news was this mild, you could have a news and politics show on YouTube and not have to worry about the lights being turned off on you, right? Mm-hmm. This is just politics with a capital P, this kind of segment here. It's just good old-fashioned 90s era, you know, Senate, House, jockeying for power politics. So Chuck Schumer, this was on March 12th. So March 12th would have been Thursday, correct? Wednesday. Republicans drafted their continuing resolution without any input from congressional Democrats. Because of that, Republicans do not have the votes in the Senate to invoke cloture on the House CR. Our caucus is unified on a clean April 11th continuing resolution. We should vote on that. So here's Chuck Schumer talking very, very tough about how he is going to vote no and have a united Democratic caucus voting against the Republican CR and potentially force a government shutdown. So here he is talking very tough.
Government should be funding the government should be a bipartisan effort. But Republicans chose a partisan path, drafting their continuing resolution without any input from congressional Democrats. Because of that, Republicans do not have the votes in the Senate to invoke cloture on the House CR. Our caucus is unified on a clean April 11th CR that will keep the government open and give Congress time to negotiate bipartisan legislation that can pass. We should vote on that. I hope our Republican colleagues will join us to avoid a shutdown on Friday. I yield the floor.
Okay, now I would say a few moments later, but it's not a few moments later. It's actually 24 hours later. So
look
it took
at
a little
Keaton
bit
with
longer.
the meme play.
Yeah. Unfortunately, and for the sake of accuracy, I could not say this was a few moments, but still a pretty stunning reversal because just 24 hours later, on March 13th, Chuck Schumer comes out and immediately caves. I believe it's my job to make the best choice for the country to minimize the harms to the American people. Therefore, I will vote to keep the government open and not shut it down. Here he is explaining why everything he said the day before was just empty threats and chest pounding. And okay, I give up.
While the CR bill is very bad, the potential for a shutdown has consequences for America that are much, much worse. For sure, the Republican bill is a terrible option. It is not a clean CR. It is deeply partisan. It doesn't address far too many of this country's needs. But I believe allowing Donald Trump to take even much more power via a government shutdown is a far worse option. I believe it is my job to make the best choice for the country to minimize the harms to the American people. Therefore, I will vote to keep the government open and not shut it down. There is nobody in the world, nobody, who wants to shut the government down more than Donald Trump and more than Elon Musk. We should not.
Talking like he's still standing up. So, by the way, just so everybody knows, what a clean CR is a spending bill that maintains spending levels according to the previous year's budget. So a clean CR would be, for example, no cuts, as opposed to this CR, which is $13 billion worth of cuts, and no increases in what? Defense spending. So this CR raises the military budget by $6 billion and cuts $13 billion worth of a lot else. That's non-military spending. So this is what they would call a dirty CR, a filthy CR, a horrible CR. So when he says he wants a clean CR,
A slutty CR.
a slutty CR, dirty, slutty CR, exactly. So when he said he wanted a clean CR, they wanted to just basically buy themselves time to avoid a shutdown and keep everything the way it was until they get to that. They had the ability to push for that because the Republicans need 60 votes in order to proceed for the final passage of the bill. So he had the power to block the Republicans. And the reason he didn't want to do that is because that would trigger a government shutdown where he argues Donald Trump would have even more executive power than he has now. Of course, according to this CR, Donald Trump and the executive branch still have a tremendous amount of discretion, which means nothing in this CR is going to stop Doge from essentially going through and cutting what they like. CR or no CR, we know they weren't really paying much attention to Congress anyway. So what this is just a blank check for Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Doge through the end of September. We'll let them keep going.
Not give it to them. And make no mistake, Democrats will continue to fight what Donald Trump is doing. Everything that Trump, Musk, and Republicans have done so far has a clear goal. Again, cutting taxes for billionaires, eviscerate Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. This is the fight that matters most, and the fight we must focus on. All the chaos we
tomorrow,
see,
starting tomorrow.
all the lawlessness, all the grift and corrupt behavior.
It's going to be a good day.
It's all about rigging the system
tomorrow
in favor of the ultra-wealthy at the expense of working Americans. This is the fight the American people need to see. This is the fight that Democrats will win.
When? When? I mean, you're literally giving them what they want. Now, notice he says at the beginning of that, no one wants to shut down more than Donald Trump. Well, if that's true, why did Trump tweet this out? Congratulations to Chuck Schumer for doing the right thing. Took guts and courage. The big tax cuts, LA fire fix, debt ceiling bill, and so much more is coming. We should all work together on that very dangerous situation. A non-pass would be a country destroyer. Approval will lead us to new heights. Again, really good and smart move by Senator Schumer. This could lead to something big for the USA. A whole new direction and beginning. Signed, DJT. So apparently, Donald Trump did not want to shut down.
It's like a letter from the Zodiac.
Yeah, right, exactly. And was very, very happy that a shutdown was averted. But you know who was not happy? Just about every other Democrat in Congress, save what did he get? He got 15 to vote along with him plus another 14. It ended up being a 62-38 vote in the Senate. So you didn't get most of the Democrats to go along with this. And, of course, only one Democrat in the House voted for the original CR, Jared Golden, swing state, very right-wing Democrat. Shutdown vote leaves Democrats bitterly divided and Schumer under fire. The Senate averted a federal government shutdown full of political and practical unknowns. But the decision to back the GOP funding bill has left the party still reeling from Donald Trump's 2024 win, even more rudderless and divided. House Democrats are taking shots at Senate Democrats, A fired-up base feels enraged and is flooding senators' phone lines, and Senate Minority Leader Charles E. Schumer has emerged as a lightning rod absorbing the party's anger, with some of his key allies standing silently by while he's attacked. I knew when I made this decision I'd get a lot of criticism from a lot of quarters, Schumer said in an interview.
Not bad. Not bad.
Let's face it. Yeah, that's pretty good. The House was in a much easier position. They could vote no on the funding bill without shutting down the government. The Senate, we can't do that. See, they have it easy. They could just vote no and not face any consequences for their decision. There would be some consequences for my decision, so I decided to just punt. That's basically what he's saying there. Schumer, who has led the Senate Democratic caucus for 8 years, defended his decision to vote for the GOP funding bill as the best way to fight Trump's sweeping plan for downsizing the government, saying a shutdown would be Doge on steroids. He said the same activists who are vexed now would be pleading with Senate Democrats to reopen the government a few weeks into the shutdown. Once it became clear Trump and Elon Musk's U.S. Doge service were taking advantage of the closure to make even deeper cuts. There's no off-ramp, he said, of a shutdown in a GOP-controlled Washington. But Schumer's explanation has done nothing to stem a fierce tide of criticism from House Democrats, including talk of a primary challenge and pushback from within its own chamber that has weakened one of the Democratic Party's few visible leaders. In a stunning rebuke, Schumer's former leadership counterpart, Representative Nancy Pelosi, publicly urged Senate Democrats to vote against their leader on Friday, pulling the old identity politics card as they always do. Democratic senators should listen to the women, Pelosi said in a statement, referring to, hey, whatever works. But in this case, it didn't work well enough. Pelosi said in a statement, referring to Patty Murray, the top Democrat on the Senate Appropriations Committee, and Rosa DeLauro, the top Democrat on the House Appropriations Committee, both of whom opposed the bill. This damaging legislation only makes matters worse. Lawmakers as diverse as Senator Michael Bennet, who is relatively moderate, to Murray, who is more liberal, expressed frustration with Schumer's strategy. They were upset that they did not discuss their plan as a group until Tuesday when they walked through the choice they faced, even though it had been clear this funding deadline had been approaching for weeks. I've never seen anything like it in the time I've been in the Senate toward any leader on our side, a senior Democratic aide said of the frustration now facing Schumer. But in the interview, Schumer brushed back criticism that he should have planned earlier for the possibility that Speaker Mike Johnson would have enough votes to pass the funding bill in the House and begin crafting a unified message on it earlier. Quote, we had hoped that maybe Johnson couldn't get the votes, Schumer said, but when he did, it put us in a very, very tough place. Again, that's the most powerful Democratic politician in America right now. Yeah, we had hoped that maybe the Republicans wouldn't jam through a shitty bill. They haven't been known to do that in the past, and when they did it, we were kind of taken by surprise. Schumer suggested that he and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries were on the same page on the low odds of Johnson passing a funding bill on his own. I talked to Hakeem regularly, and he was very hopeful that it wouldn't pass. And he was very hopeful that he could get all the Democrats, and I'm glad he did. So again, just more double talk from Schumer. He's saying, I'm glad Jeffries was able to get all of the House Democrats to vote no. But you just voted yes. And one of the big problems that a lot of the House Democrats have with Schumer is it was kind of a tough vote for a lot of the swing district Democrats to take. Right. And they hoped that at least their party leader would have their back on it. Now they took that tough vote for nothing because the Senate just passed it through anyway. Dozens of House Democrats slammed Schumer in a letter on Friday. If Republicans in Congress want to pass this bill, they should do so with their own votes, Representative Derek Tran and 65 other Democrats wrote in the letter. However, since they cannot, Republicans must work with Democrats to pass a clean funding bill. So far, Schumer's own senators are declining to criticize him, even as they forcefully argue for a different strategy. I remain convinced this was the moment for us to have a fight and to make it clear that we're going to stand up to President Trump, Senator Chris Coons told reporters. But there are differences of opinion in my caucus, and I respect those who have reached a different conclusion. In remarks to reporters Thursday night, Schumer said he faced a Hobson's choice, an apparent decision that's really no choice at all. The bottom line is you have to make these decisions based on what is best for not only your party but your country, Schumer said. I believe that my members understand that I came to that conclusion and respect it. So again, just not making it any better on yourself. If it's a Hobson's choice, if it's a meaningless choice, then that's all the more reason to vote no. Because by voting no, you're at least drawing a clear line between you and the Republican Party. You're at least signaling to your base that you're going to vote no on a blank check for Elon and Trump to keep going through and making essentially whatever cuts that they want, since this CR, not only does it already cut $13 billion worth of non-military spending, but it also gives Trump and Elon broad authority to cut even more should they so choose. So if it's not a meaningful choice, then doesn't the decision fall to whether or not it's good optics, whether or not it's good politics, whether or not it actually generates enthusiasm in your base or depresses your base? Obviously, the base really wanted you to take a stand here, which is why Chris Matthews and Morning Joe go on MSNBC to try and manufacture consent for caving. So here is the controlled opposition network, MSNBC, trying to explain why actually Schumer had no choice but to back the GOP funding bill.
About the importance of people that were fighting, but when you fight, you also have to fight smart. And while I think Democrats would love the opportunity to push back against Republicans, again, as we found out, because we went through 1 or 2 government shutdowns, when you shut down the government, the president is the one that decides what's needed, not needed, and a shutdown would just hand over a lot more power to Elon Musk.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that Chuck Schumer went through a lot of hell to get to this decision yesterday. He did not want to be there. He didn't want to be the odd man out, the leader that hadn't fought. But if you look at the House of Representatives, the Speaker was very smart to get a majority support for his budget, for the CR. He got it through. He didn't need any Democrats in the House. And then he sent them all home. The whole House of Representatives has been sent home. They're not in Washington. And then the Senate has a majority. Even without Rand Paul, they've got 52 votes. They have a majority. So to beat them, you have to filibuster. Well, it used to be Democrats didn't like to filibuster on the issues, but everybody said he should have filibustered. Chuck Schumer was in a problem. He also saw what it was going to look like 2 or 3 weeks from now. If they hadn't gotten back to the government, if the government had shot down for a couple of weeks, then who are you going to blame? Trump and his tariff craziness, his trade war? Or are you going to blame the Democrats for shutting the government down? You got to look forward. You can't all be Bernie Sanders. You can't all be in the back room. You can't all be sitting in the back benches and blaming the leadership. The leadership has to make tough decisions. Schumer made his, and he's going to have to pay for it. If he gets the votes to support the Republicans, this thing will be through this weekend, and we'll see who looks better later. But Schumer's in a tough spot, and it
So interesting.
And, I'm just going to say, if Donald Trump had not won, I don't think you'd have me on here. He has made it safe for old perverts with sexual assault allegations against them to come on Morning Joe. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Hey, let's be honest about that. So if you look, Chris Matthews just made the point that Democrats would be blamed for a shutdown. When you look at the poll, it's actually quite the opposite. 32% of the country would blame Democrats for a shutdown. 31% would blame Republicans, and 22% would blame Donald Trump. So if you add the congressional Republicans column to the Donald Trump column, what that means is actually 53% of Americans would blame the Republican Party and not the Democrats. So actually, the Democrats could have very easily stuck to their guns. There wouldn't have been a tremendous price to pay, as he's trying to make it sound there. But those are, as the MSNBC viewers would say, those are the basic white men who get to keep their jobs at MSNBC, whereas Joy Reid, afuera! There's done, gone. Well, here is a second opinion on the same network. So this is that new show of theirs, The Weekends, which I don't know how many people watch that show. I always forget this congresswoman's name. She was a former congresswoman from Maryland. But she gives a different side of the story that's much more representative of the party base. Donna Edwards, that's it. I always forget her name. She's a familiar face. I always forget.
Look, I think that, the reality here is there was no message, no strategy, and at the end of the day, no leadership. And this is really a black mark, I think, on Chuck Schumer. You cannot signal on Wednesday that you want to fight, and then on Thursday, you cave. And so now Republicans know that all they have to do is play Democrats, and it'll work. And I think that Representative Ocasio-Cortez is right when she says that frontline members who are in the toughest district in the country, now have to go out there having taken really a very difficult vote without any support from the Senate leadership. I think it's deeply disappointing. And I think if Democrats had started and Chuck Schumer had started with a serious message in advance, then they could have sold to the American people that, one, this was not a continuing resolution. In fact, it cut government spending. What a continuing resolution does is it continues government funding as it is until appropriations bills can come through. That is not what happened here. And frankly, they have a slush fund, the administration does, because there were no parameters put on the spending that was done. And so now Republicans can do whatever it is that they want over these next several weeks, and especially Trump and Musk. They have carte blanche in the administration. And I think this is a real black mark, a stain on Chuck Schumer's leadership.
Well, that by far a more popular opinion than Chris Matthews, which might explain why new polling today shows that among the American public overall, the Democratic Party's favorability rating stands at just 29%, a record low in CNN's polling dating back to 1992. So the first big fight, the first big test that the Democrats had in the resistance era 2.0, they failed. And they failed it largely because of Chuck Schumer, who went against the wishes of, when you add together all the Democrats who voted no, what was it, 213 in the House plus 40-something in the Senate. You had basically 14 Democrats defy the wishes of 250-plus Democrats to push through this Republican bill when, as you see, despite Chris Matthews' attempt to spin this, the people would have blamed Donald Trump and or the Republicans in Congress far more than they would have blamed the Democrats because they're the majority party. They're the majority party. And so obviously the right thing to do is to force them to come to the table and just say no to everything until they give you what you want. That's the only leverage you have. It's just to be as obstructionist as you possibly can. There's no doubt that's what the Republicans would do if the shoe were on the other foot. But of course, the Democrats don't get paid to play power politics. They get paid, to lose. It's good cop, bad cop. Their role is to do what Schumer did. Come up there, talk tough, cave, and blame it on, well, I just felt a civic duty to keep the government open because we'd be giving Trump more power if we shut it down. If there were a government shutdown, it would fall to the executive branch to determine which services and departments are essential versus non-essential. So yes, they would have tremendous power. As Schumer himself said, it's a Hobson's choice because they have tremendous power now anyway. That's with Congress. And as we know, they have not paid any attention at all to what Congress has mandated or not mandated in these first 6 weeks. So basically, you had an opportunity here to convince your base that you were using what little leverage you have. And Schumer, of course, gave that all away. Not really a surprise.
All right. This is the problem. If you are a party without a point of view, without an ethos, without a mission, without a goal, without a plan, without a project, you have nothing to organize around. You have nothing to motivate people to go the extra mile, to risk their political careers. It is simply a money laundering scheme and a professional network. There is no actual opposition party there. The Republicans, say what you will, they had a mission. They had a very clear vision coming into the 2024 elections of what they wanted to do. If you asked anybody, what do the Republicans want to do? They would have been able to list 3, 4, 5, maybe more things that the Republicans want to do. They want to get transgender people out of sports. They want to impose tariffs. It would have been very clear to people what their agenda was. If you ask people, what is Kamala Harris going to do? Shit, we do this for a living. I could barely answer that question.
Right.
If you would ask me that in October 2024, what's Kamala Harris's agenda? I don't know. She's going to call the opposition weird. I don't know.
Right.
Like what was their message other than a cultural message? Now, it's easier for the Republicans to stand for something because the donors like their agenda. The Democrats, as soon as they sold themselves to Wall Street under Bill Clinton, they lost their reason for existing. So at this point, yeah, Schumer, okay, you could shut down the government and, all right, yeah, they should have done that. To what end, though? Like, you have to ask, like, what would they be demanding? What would their demands be? They don't actually have a politics. They have no particular political agenda. It's just they've been reduced to just a basic, nicer version of what the Republicans do.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, it's a status quo party. It's an end of history party. I mean, in this particular example, the short-term goal would be to get a clean CR so that there are no budget cuts. for 30 days until they get another bite at the apple.
It's not enough. Daniel Burnham, the turn of the century architect who designed the Chicago World's Fair, he designed the Flatiron Building. When he unveiled his plan for the Chicago World's Fair, the White City, said, God, man, that's too much. And he said, well, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but he said, small goals have no power to stir men to greatness. When you just say, yeah, we just want a clean CR, it's not enough. You'd be better off saying you're going to demand better unemployment insurance. You're going to demand higher Social Security increases. That's something to motivate people. Why do you think, in spite of the fact that he's a sheepdog who never actually delivered on anything he promised, Bernie Sanders is drawing these enormous crowds? Because even though he's full of shit, what he's describing is a goal. It's the Big Lebowski thing. Say what you will about National Socialism. At least it's an ethos. You're talking about a party with no ethos. So when you come to these moments of crisis, of challenge, there's nothing for them to really motivate people around or organize people around, not even the general public.
Well, this is why James Carville said that the strategy that the Democrats should employ here is just roll over and play dead. Just don't do anything and let the Republicans own all of this chaos, which I got to say,
that's what
from a strategist standpoint, well, not exactly. I mean, in this example, they actually gave the Republicans what they wanted. They actually showed up and voted yes when the Republicans needed them to. I think what Carville's saying is play dead. Just vote no on everything. Vote no on everything. Let them shut down the government. They'll let them come to you with a clean CR to kick the can. In other words, just be a status quo party, lay down, get out of their way, and trust that they will tank things so bad that you will ride that wave back into power. If you're a party that stands for nothing, that probably is the best advice you could get at this point, because they're obviously not going to rally around anything else. Now, from a sort of palace intrigue standpoint, I'll say, Chuck Schumer's got a lot of the dirt on his face now. But I can tell you right now, this doesn't look good for Hakeem Jeffries either, because there are a lot of people who write a lot of big checks to the Democratic Party now who I guarantee you are saying, you know what? God damn it. If Nancy Pelosi were head of the party in the House, if she were the minority leader and she told Senate Democrats to vote no, they'd have voted no, because she's got the juice. Jeffries has no juice. Jeffries has no charisma. He doesn't have the experience. He does not have the stature. He is a fundraising machine. That's why he's in the job, but not like Nancy is a fundraising machine. No. He really is embarrassed in this as well. And
Nancy
this is why
cannot play the alphabet game.
Yeah, right. She can't play the alphabet game. But between Jeffries and Schumer, you have, and the polling says it right there, a 29% favorability rating for the party overall. There really is a crisis of confidence within the Democratic Party from the second and third ranking Democrats in the House and Senate all the way down through the rank and file. They are in such shambles, which is good. I mean, it has to get to that point.
Yeah, it's the final act that really began in earnest. Of course, the groundwork was laid in the 70s, but with Clinton's election and the inauguration of neoliberalism as the defining ethos of the Democratic Party, it could never have ended any other way. There was always an inherent meaninglessness of a Wall Street owned left party. They got away with it for a while. Is this a great time or what? We're going to give microloans. We don't have to be at war with business. We just have to persuade business that it's good for business to be nice to people. Hey, everybody wins. We don't have to have any class antagonism. No, of course, that's all nonsense. They got away with it while there was enough money sloshing around in the economy. There were enough remnants of New Deal social safety net policies that there was some kind of a middle class still existing. And the internet was being invented when Clinton came in. It was being commercialized. It wouldn't have mattered what the economic policy coming from the White House was. There would have been a boom economy. And that was really the tragedy of the 90s. It made people think Clintonian economics worked for average people, rather than this was a quirk of history where you could get away with this kind of austerity and still have a booming economy.
Right. Indeed. Well said. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $10 over on YouTube. Thanks, everybody, for your super chats and Rumble rants. Yo, what's up? I ate at Aqua Blue. It's across the street from Il Divino on 9th Avenue. I'm drinking at Local 42 on the same street. Russ, I loved your tour. Next stop is Mr. Biggs. I remember Mr. Biggs.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that was on the tour, I assume, obviously. But yeah, I've been to Mr. Biggs several times. SRM 84.
Now you can tell everybody about the people that got cut up in the bathrooms there.
There you go. Thanks so much for the ad-free link. Best news of my week. Helps take some of the sting out of West Virginia's NCAA tournament snub. Well, thank you for that. I'm glad we could make your week a little better. I don't really follow March Madness very well. But thank you for that. Yes, that'll be for paid members. You'll get those ad-free streams. I am. Thanks for the $10 super sticker and the laughing potato emoji there. Appreciate that. Jessica May, Newsom and Bannon admitted on the podcast this is the Biden CR. Professional wrestling. If you haven't watched that interview, it was interesting. Well, Bannon wants a lot more cuts. It's not quite the Biden CR, but Bannon wants a lot more. Bannon always wants more. So, yeah, he thinks it's a sellout move. The diehard conservative base is not happy with this either. Right. They didn't get what they wanted. But the Democrats could have squeezed them even harder. Just either force a shutdown or force them to come for you because that's what power you have, and that's the only power you have. But they don't want to have an argument. They don't trust their ability to win an argument. This is the other thing. They said about Clinton, I forget who said this about him, Bill and Hillary Clinton always acted like the country disagreed with them. And so they felt they had to kind of trick people into voting for them. And that still is where the Democrats come from. They don't trust themselves to be able to win the argument. What if the Republicans blame us? What are we going to do?
They don't really have an argument.
Right.
They don't really have convictions.
Right.
When you really have conviction, you have an argument inherently.
Right.
Because you believe in something. You're fighting for something.
Right.
These Republicans, they're never at a loss for explaining what their convictions are.
Right.
It's horrifying and moronic as some of them may be. They know what they are.
Right. Exactly. Deportations for anyone who didn't graduate from Liberty University.
Right.
Yeah. Philip Blair.
Executions for anyone who protests for Palestine.
Yeah, exactly.
In the town square.
Charles E. Schumer, a.k.a. Chuck E. Cheese. Thank you, Philip Blair. Michael Zamrowski, Donald Trump gave me crabs. Thank you, Michael Zamrowski. Appreciate that. Furrows Queen says, so gutted I missed the tour last night. Well, you could watch the replay, Furrows Queen. It's still up there. That was a public stream. It's up on a Rumble channel. I woke up at 2 a.m. face down on the floor of the lounge with my cat staring at me disappointedly. Lesson learned, I can't fit a nap in before whatever it is. All right, well, I'm glad it was a nap. The way you set that up, it sounded like something worse than a nap. But I'm glad it was just a nap. Yeah, exactly. Glad it was just a nap. It ended better than I thought. And yes, watch the replay. Hillary Hinton meeting Russell in person last night was kind of like having sex with someone for the first time. The mystery's gone. Yeah, the fascination is over. All we have left now is awkward interactions on the stairs. There you go. China Shill, I'm ready for Darryl destruction. Thank you, China Shill. We will get there. We will get to it. Appreciate you as always. Abiding 71, food poisoning kept Corn Pop from walking Bob Dylan up on stage in 1975. The one thing that's an adjustment with the mic arm is I'm a little further from the screen than usual, so it's a little bit. I gotta enlarge the font a little bit.
You can't see so good.
Yeah. I can't see as good from here. Israeli embassy in China official Weibo account Chinese Twitter has muted comments on their Hasbara post. Interesting. Thank you. Floop 1000 Silicon Valley is USAID 2.0. Why bribe people when you can silence them? Thank you for that. Appreciate that very much. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Segment number 2. We got a judge.
All right, we have another one of these pesky judges with the temerity to assert the authority of the judicial branch, almost like we still have checks and balances in this country. Right. Judge blocks Trump's use of 1798 law to speed up deportations, but some migrants still removed. Now, I have been calling this, we've both been calling this for quite some time. clearly there was going to come a moment, probably sooner than later, where they just basically told the judge to go get their shine box. And it looks like that moment has arrived 6 weeks in. You've issued your order, now try to enforce it.
Right.
So this is Marco Rubio earlier this week. We have sent 2 dangerous top MS-13 leaders plus 21 of its most wanted back to face justice in El Salvador. Also, as promised by POTUS, we sent over 250 alien enemy members of Tren de Aragua, which El Salvador has agreed to hold in their very good jails at a fair price that will also save our taxpayer dollars. President Nayib Bukele is not only the strongest security leader in our region, he's also a great friend of the U.S. Thank you. And now Bukele tweeted out, he's very proud of himself. Today, the first 238 members of the Venezuelan criminal organization Tren de Aragua arrived in our country. They were immediately transferred to Kekot, the terrorism confinement center, for a period of 1 year, renewable. The United States will pay a very low fee for them, but a high one for us. Over time, these actions, combined with the production already being generated by more than 40,000 inmates engaged in various workshops and labor under the Zero Idleness program, you can't make it up, will help make our prison system self-sustainable. Sounds like slavery, but okay. As of today, we have that here too. I'm not slamming El Salvador. As of today, it costs $200 million per year. On this occasion, the U.S. has also sent us 23 MS-13 members wanted by Salvadoran justice, including 2 ringleaders. One of them is a member of the criminal organization's highest structure. This will help us finalize intelligence gathering and go after the last remnants of MS-13, including its former and new members, money, weapons, drugs, hideouts, collaborators, and sponsors. As always, we continue advancing in the fight against organized crime, but this time we are also helping our allies, making our prison system self-sustainable and obtaining vital intelligence to make our country an even safer place, all in a single action. May God bless El Salvador, and may God bless the United States. Now, he dropped a little video. The original is about 3 minutes. I cut it down some, but it's pretty interesting. All right, let me get that. I think they got Michael Bay to do this.
Sortomala.
Easy!
So that is quite a well-produced little video that he dropped there. Now you might be saying, well, good for them. They're members of a brutal gang. You know, I mean, be that as it may, we don't know. We don't know because they didn't go through the court process. That's the whole point. We don't know. These people could just be refugees. We don't know. We have no way of knowing. Secretary Rubio quote tweeted that. Thank you for your assistance and friendship, President Bukele. Now, one of those, that aforementioned pesky judge, ordered them to bring these people back. Yesterday, D.C. District Judge James Boasberg ordered a halt on deportation flights of Venezuelan TDA gang members being removed under the Alien Enemies Act. They landed in El Salvador last night to be kept in a max security prison. Trump's most consequential decision yet. That is Trump's simp account, Johnny MAGA. And Bukele gleefully responded to the headline of the judge order, oopsie, too late, with a laughing emoji. This is USA Today explaining it a little more. A federal judge Saturday blocked President Donald Trump from using the Alien Enemies Act to immediately deport members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, ordering any deportation flights underway as a result of Trump invoking the 1798 law, Return to the United States. The order came after Trump on Saturday issued a proclamation, which he signed the day before, that relies on the 18th century law to deport members of the gang, which he said continues to engage in mass illegal migration to the United States to further its objectives of harming United States citizens. The Alien Enemies Act allows the deportation without a hearing of anyone from the designated enemy country who is not a naturalized citizen. The temporary restraining order is for at least 14 days to allow litigation in the case to proceed. In invoking the act, Trump's proclamation said Tren de Aragua, which Trump last month designated as a foreign terrorist organization, has been undertaking hostile actions and conducting irregular warfare against the territory of the United States, both directly and at the direction of Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro's regime. But Boasberg, an appointee of former President Barack Obama, said the Alien Enemies Act does not provide a basis for the president's proclamation, given that the terms invasion, predatory incursion really relate to hostile acts perpetrated by any nation and commensurate to war. Congress approved the Alien Enemies Act in anticipation of a war against France. It has been invoked 3 times during the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II, according to Catherine Yon Ebright, a counsel at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU. The law says a president can invoke it during a declared war with a foreign nation or government, or when any invasion or predatory incursion is perpetrated, attempted, or threatened against the United States. If invoked, the foreign citizen could, quote, be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed as alien enemies. Despite being invoked during wars, former presidents Woodrow Wilson and Harry Truman each continued to enforce the law after the end of hostilities, Ebright said. Wilson used it to detain German and Austro-Hungarian immigrants for 2 years after the end of World War I in 1918. Truman used it for detentions and deportations for 6 years after the end of World War II in 1945. The Supreme Court upheld Truman's extension in 1948 by reasoning the end of wartime authorities is a political matter. Quote, it is not for us to question a belief by the president that enemy aliens who were justifiably deemed fit subjects for internment during active hostilities do not lose their potency for mischief during the period of confusion and conflict, which is characteristic of a state of war, even when the guns are silent, but the peace of peace has not come. Justice Felix Frankfurter wrote in the 5-4 decision. These are matters of political judgment for which judges have neither technical competence nor official responsibility. Now, presumably, that is the precedent that they're going to rely on to try to claim, because clearly the country is not at war with Venezuela or any of the other countries that the deportees are from. So they're going to try to argue, well, it was allowed under Truman with this ruling. Now, something that particular judge got horribly wrong, I think most people would agree today, is that a lot of those people who were detained were just Japanese families who had actually done nothing wrong. He was coming from a place of presumption that this law had been exercised in a fair and just way. So why wouldn't you continue to hold them if they were hostile actors, when a lot of them were children and mothers? So here you go. It's on. Whatever you think about deporting these people, as we have predicted, the moment has arrived. This is exactly the Curtis Yarvin playbook. Flood the zone, do what you want, fire people, shut down departments, and when the court tells you you can't, tell them, okay, what are you going to do about it? Took 6 weeks to get there.
And when the decision seems least controversial is when you have to pay the closest attention, because it's when they'll try to do the most controversial thing they can do, which is defy a judge's order. Because as Russ said, you know, and I would agree, I mean, if you assume that these are all MS-13 gang members, obviously it's a horrible, brutal gang, and most people are on board with deporting violent criminals.
Sure.
But we know there have been people mistaken for gang members who were apprehended at the border. One guy had a tattoo on his neck that was not one of the signatures of whatever gang they accused him of being a part of, but they just treated him as a gang member because he had a tattoo, right? And even if you think they should be deported, you still have a situation now. To me, the point of this story is you have that showdown. We didn't know what issue it was going to be fought over, but what happens when they tell a judge, fuck you, we're doing it anyway?
Exactly. And what implications does that have on everything? Because clearly their point of view, and Elon is continuously tweeting this, is that judges have no power. And that is not how the Constitution is set up. Now, if you want to argue, I've been saying this since day one, if you want to argue that you don't feel that our constitutional system of government works anymore, just say that, own it, and say that you want a king, because that is really what they're describing. Elon is, I'm sure he knows better, but he knows a lot of the ignorant followers he's cultivated don't. That this is crazy that judges have this power. What's the point of an election? Well, see, we had this revolution against a king, and the founders were very skeptical of centralized authority and the abuses that it's prone to. So they set the system up where presumably or theoretically no one part of the government could really gain inordinate power over society without being checked by the other two. That's not a bug, it's a feature.
Of course, the whole sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You want to say you feel it doesn't work? Okay, all right, but then admit that you want a king, or you want a modern version of that. What Curtis Yarvin describes as a kind of an executive CEO that has king-like powers.
Well, yeah, the whole point of the judiciary is that it is relatively unaccountable to the public. I mean, it's supposed to be unaccountable to the public in that way, because that is what protects the rights of the minority when one party has a majority, which is very often the case in this country, especially after a national presidential election where it's quite common for one party to run the table and have the presidency, the House, and the Senate. What protects the rights of the minority in those circumstances is an independent judiciary that doesn't directly run for office. Exactly. They are appointed by people who hold office, so they are accountable to the public in that kind of a secondary way, but it's secondary. The whole point is to insulate them from the whims of the masses in the moment. Now, that does slow a lot of things down, but hey, when you're the out party, you're grateful they're there. And when
Right.
you're the in party, they're a pain in the ass, of course, right? But that's
Right.
the way it works.
So the Trump administration is not complying with an order from an Obama-appointed judge to turn around planes already in the air carrying illegal immigrants deported under the Alien Enemies Act. And now, as we know, they have landed and been detained. David Farah here. To the idiot celebrating Alien Enemies Act of 1798 invocation, did you know the last time this law was used was when we put U.S. citizens of Japanese origin in concentration camps? Imagine the next administration using it to put conservatives in concentration camps. You know, I am betting that they are assuming there's not going to be a next administration in any true sense.
Right.
Aaron Reichlin Melnick, one of the people seemingly deported to El Salvador unlawfully under the Alien Enemies Act, had a court hearing scheduled for tomorrow where he was going to present evidence that he was not a member of Tren de Aragua. Now he may be in a Salvadoran prison, and we know that now he actually is. And this is what he's quote tweeting. Our defendant client fled Venezuela last year and came to the U.S. to seek asylum. He has a strong claim. He was detained at entry because ICE alleged his tattoos are gang-related. They are absolutely not.
Yeah,
I think
similar
that's the
case to
you're
what I'm
talking about.
Maybe
It
it's
might
the
be the
same
same
one, or maybe
one.
it's a different. Maybe it's the same
it might
kind
be
of thing.
another one.
Yeah.
My father-in-law was incarcerated when he was 2. My mother-in-law was born in a prison camp pictured here. It is despicable that Trump will use the same law used during World War II to carry out mass deportations of migrant families today. This is wrong. And here's Elon, because Congressman Brandon Gill is going to be filing articles of impeachment against activist judge James Boasberg this week. Elon Musk, in his typical one-word style, necessary. Necessary. Yes, it's necessary to persecute judges for doing their job and raising completely appropriate constitutional questions. Now, again, hey, nobody's saying, at least we're not saying, don't deport violent gang members.
Right, of course.
You go through the process. You give them their day in court. You don't invoke a law from 1798 that's only been invoked in wartime to try to get around constitutional means of deportation. And for Americans who think, well, that's not going to affect me, you know, you already have Trump saying he wants to go after people who boycott Tesla.
Yep.
No. Not just say, a lot of people say it's, well, firebombing Teslas are illegal. Yes, it's illegal. You don't need to call them terrorists. He didn't just say that. He said the boycotts are illegal collusion.
Yes, he called the boycotts illegal. He didn't just call vandalism illegal. He called the boycotts illegal.
He called the boycotts
collusive.
themselves collusive, illegal collusion.
Yep.
For boycott.
Against the great American company.
Once you open this door where you're just going to let this administration come up with any flimsy pretense to get around legal procedure to do whatever it wants, and you think that's not going to come back to bite you, you're going to be sadly disabused of that, I think, sooner rather than later. It's not about protecting violent gang members. It's about protecting us. This is a very dangerous precedent, particularly in the defying the court order. At that point, you have a completely unchecked, all-powerful executive. You have a king. You have a king.
Right.
Do you want a king? Because that's what you have if nobody can check his power. What else would that be but a king?
Right. So here's how the thinking goes on this, right? Because, you know, almost no one is going to object to deporting MS-13 gang members who are here illegally. So you start with the group, okay, obviously nobody is against that.
Right.
Then you have to ask yourself, okay, well, what if you get it wrong? What if in that example, that person had a tattoo that you misread as a gang tattoo? What if you sent an innocent person to an El Salvadoran prison with a bunch of MS-13 gang members and they're not in the gang, and you put an innocent person through absolute hell like that? Well, the answer among much of MAGA is, well, fuck them. If they're here illegally, it doesn't matter what happens.
Well, that's
to them.
exactly what the answer is.
Right?
Yep.
They're a criminal anyway. right? And that is what we've talked about it a lot on this show. We're some of the only people who have been talking about this, I must say. If no, we don't pat ourselves in the back, no one else will. Once you declare it open season on a group, not MS-13, but a group, undocumented immigrants, illegal immigrants, if you want to call them that. Once it's open season on that group and they don't deserve due process, well, that's how you get to a point where you start mistaking, yes, undocumented immigrants who are not gang members for gang members. And what if you fuck up? What if you fuck up? And what is the harm in going through the process to make sure you get it right in every case? What is the harm of that? The harm of that is that it slows down their shock and awe operation. They are in hyperdrive now. They are trying to get as much of this rammed through as they possibly can. This is move fast, break things. This is big tech's ethos. Now they are applying it to everything that this government does,
right?
Because they just want to flood the zone. They want to do as much as they can at such a fast pace that the system cannot keep up with them. A system that is designed to keep progress, if you want to call it, that's at many times frustratingly slow, right? That system is not going to be able to keep up with just a runaway train of draconian policy. And this is their playbook. Just go as fast as you can and fuck it. Let the judges sort it out. That takes time. We're going to be 100 steps ahead of them by the time they're on to us for the thing we did 100 steps ago.
Exactly. Yeah. This is the first time. That's what they've been doing. They've essentially been defying court orders while claiming they intend to conform to court orders. They're not going to defy the court, but they drag their feet. And then the court will say, hey, you were supposed to do this last week. Oh, we meant to do it last week. That's what they've been doing up to now. This is the first time they're openly defying a court order. And we'll have to see how it plays out. But it didn't take them long to get there. It took them 6 weeks. And if you look at their rhetoric, if you look at what Elon tweeted out there, and he's tweeted out many things like this, they don't believe that the judiciary should be able to check their power, not based on the Constitution, just because they don't want to. They don't want to. We want to do this. It shouldn't be this way. Okay, well, if the Constitution says that, it's wrong. So we're going to ignore it. And again, anyone who hasn't, go look at the Curtis Yarvin playbook. That is exactly what they're doing. This was the plan all along. Hey, what are you going to do? How is the court going to enforce its orders? Is it going to order the military in? Do they order the police to arrest the president? What are they going to do? Or are institutions robust enough to even enforce a court order in the face of a refusal from the executive? I suspect not. And at that point, again, you have a king. We got an email from somebody today, very nice, saying, I implore you to go to Brazil. It's very dangerous in your country. Come to a BRICS country. Come to the global south. And hey, man, they're talking good sense. It's going to get very dangerous here very fast.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think that's 100% right. Steve Bertram, thanks for the $2. Chris Matthews is a cartoon character. Thank you for that. Appreciate that very much. Let's see, what do we got over here? Anthony Ringett. Yo, how do I like the video? I can't see the button anymore. You might just have to expand the screen. It should be.
See, they're coming for us.
It should just be a thumbs up.
That's
right
the
under.
first sign.
Yes,
first sign they're watching you.
There should just be a thumbs up right under the screen. Philip Blair, thanks for the $5. Chris Matthews on our success organizing for Bernie when Bernie seemed to be fighting for us said we were Nazis in Paris. The libs take him seriously. It's amazing he still has a job there. It really is. It really is. I can't imagine taking him seriously. Michael Castillo retracted the message but kept the donation. Thank you, Michael. Steve Bertram,
Michael came on the tour on Friday.
Yep, you met Michael. Absolutely.
Had a cup of coffee with him. Nice guy.
Nice. Steve Bertram, thanks for the $5. Can you imagine the Republicans doing nothing meaningful for months after they lost the election? The Democrats don't stand for anything, which is why the donors love them. Donors just want to know things won't meaningfully change. Yep. James Vanderzand, and thanks for the $2. Dems have more seats than the GOP did in 2009 and 10. Well, that's the other irony, is that they I wouldn't say they have more power, but they're certainly closer to the threshold. It puts more pressure on the Republicans to remain unified. That's the power that they have. The Republicans can't afford any real defectors. They could only afford to have lost Massey, and then luckily for them, they didn't lose anyone else. Lyndon McLeod, thanks for the 100 Canadian dollars. Let's have a cowbell for Lyndon. Thank you, Lyndon. Appreciate that. Best show on YouTube, full stop. See what you did there. All right, well, you're a Canadian. You're in a Commonwealth.
You're in the
It's a Commonwealth, so we let that go. I tuned in late. Shit. Thank you very much. That's very, very kind of you. Appreciate that donation, Lyndon. Mark Pugliese, kudos on the mob tour. Russ saw it on Rumble. Beautiful. Thanks, Mark Pugliese. Appreciate that. Wasim Garani, funny how they call the Palestinian president of El Salvador their friend. Yeah, interesting. All right, Furrow Queen, I don't want to be that person, but I don't understand how Jimmy says that he has the best value membership in the biz and we get so much over here. No offense, JD, but they don't even watch films. Yeah, no film night over there. That's right. That's right, no film night. We're not at the level of the game where we can paywall the live streams yet. We need you guys to we need to keep those live streams repayable. John M. in Minnesota, noting that Schumer can count up the votes, so it's all kabuki. The real POSs were the Dems who voted for cloture, then voted against the CR completely symbolically. Yeah, not only that, but Schumer complimented the House Democrats for uniting against the bill, and then he votes for it. And so why are you complimenting them for voting against it?
No, it's ridiculous. That's what I'm saying. It's the end game.
Right.
Like the wheels have really come off the bus now.
Yeah, exactly. They just completely come off. Nina Kant, Schumer, Sig Heil to Elon his approval of their bill. Yes, there you go.
His heart went out to him.
My heart goes out to you. Dems fight for us, but just come short, just like the Washington Generals fought hard every game, but just came short versus the Harlem Globetrotters. That's right. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, what do we got here? Morty Duke, thanks for the $10. You're wrong. There is an ethos, the government ethos. There you go. Thank you, Morty. Appreciate that very much. Cool Blue, thanks for the $5. I described the Democratic Party as not an actual political party, but a scam operation full of con artists. Jimmy Dore was correct several years ago, concluding the Democratic Party is a dead party. Absolutely. Thank you, Cool Blue. Appreciate that very much. All right, let's move on to segment number 3. Tulsi fell in love and out of love with her new pick for assistant. Not assistant. What is it? Deputy DNI director?
Deputy DNI
Dan
director.
Bongino. Tusker Sachs or
yeah.
Dan Bongino.
Yeah, we were gonna clean up the deep state. Tulsi was gonna go in there and set a different course, but does it not apply to Israel, I guess.
Yeah, they told her, no, you can't. She said, oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this was Josh Kraushaar announcing it earlier in the week. Scoop, anti-Israel commentator tapped as deputy director of national intelligence. Daniel Davis, a senior fellow at a Koch-backed think tank, said that U.S. support for Israel's war in Gaza was a strategic and moral mistake. Here's Aaron the Buzzsaw, quote tweeting this. Like his would-be boss, Tulsi Gabbard, Daniel Davis is a combat veteran who has criticized the politicization of intelligence and sending soldiers off to die based on lies. This includes in Iraq and Afghanistan, where he served. But because you're not allowed to criticize unfettered U.S. support for Israel's occupation, he will face a backlash, and perhaps, Aaron, from his own boss, who certainly has not been on board with not supporting that unfettered support for Israel. So this is a thread they seem to have gotten really, really upset about because they all of his detractors quote it. UK media today published evidence that the Western skeptics who ridiculed the Palestinian Health Ministry had indeed given accurate numbers of civilian deaths from Israeli military ops. It was vastly understated. It would be somewhat less bad if there was at least an anguishing dilemma among those who claim to care about the lives of the weak and powerless. Something like, well, Israel was attacked on 10/7 and had to defend themselves, but were daily horrified by the kids who were dying. But there is so little of that, almost none, actually. On a practical level, we give away enormous leverage and credibility globally to hold anyone accountable for acts of wanton violence, because we not merely turn a blind eye to it, we cheer it on and supply the means to do more. On a moral level, this is a stain on our character as a nation, as a culture, that will not soon go away. So here's a Israel simp here, Olga Lautman. Also has the Ukraine flag. You ever notice it's almost always both? It's almost never either or. Wow. Another Russian agent being tapped as Deputy Director of National Intelligence. He has been quoted in Russian media and is an ally forever. Predictably, he's with Russia's position on Israel. Putin!
Wow, that is brain rot of a kind, man. I think that person's probably more a Ukraine simp than because Russia is anti-Israel, that means it's bad to be anti-Israel. Wow, you really gotta got some work to do on yourself if that's the way you think about things.
Yeah, that's some critical thinking skills right there. Predictably, the ADL jumped in. It would be extremely dangerous for Daniel Davis to be the Deputy Director of National Intelligence. He has diminished Hamas's 10/7 attack, undermined U.S. support for Israel's right to defend itself, and blatantly denies the grave threat the Iranian regime poses to global stability and American interests. All of this makes him unfit for this key security role.
So he's anti-genocide and he's against war with Iran. Yeah, what were they thinking? What were they thinking?
What were they thinking? Now with Tulsi, you never know what you're going to get. You never know which Tulsi is going to show up. But that, in a way, that's a good thing, because if you don't like Tulsi's position on something, you can surely do a simple Google search to find her taking the opposite position.
Yes.
So here she is in 2018. Israel needs to stop using live ammunition in its response to unarmed protesters in Gaza. It has resulted in over 50 dead and thousands seriously wounded. So I guess it was that Tulsi that decided to pick him. And maybe it was this Tulsi that decided to withdraw the nomination.
On our college campuses are not these protests actually truly calling for peace, understanding the dangers of the situation there. They have become puppets of this radical Islamist organization that stands diametrically opposed to our ideology of freedom. And unfortunately, President Biden, he seems to be afraid of being called an Islamophobe, which is why he's shirking away from a very clear statement of standing against anti-Semitism, for free speech, and against this radical Islamist ideology.
Will the real Tulsi please stand up? Please
real
stand
Jekyll and
up.
Hyde thing.
Yeah, is it the Tulsi who was a young global leader? It's always amazing to me, these deep state warriors, people fighting the deep state who aren't concerned about that. I always heard those people, young global leader, you're disqualified. Much less she was the commander of a PSYOP unit in the Army, literally directed a PSYOP unit. So who knows which Tulsi made the decision to pick him and which Tulsi made the decision to drop him. But needless to say, Gabbard drops pick for top intelligence post, a critic of Israel on Gaza. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, opted not to name a critic of Israel's war in Gaza to a top post managing briefings for the president after the proposed appointment upset some members of President Trump's coalition, according to officials familiar with the deliberations. Daniel Davis, a senior fellow at a Washington think tank who is skeptical of American intervention overseas, was undergoing a background check to become the deputy director for mission integration, the officials said. The post is a powerful job that oversees the compiling of the president's daily brief, a compendium of intelligence assessments that goes to the White House and top policymakers. But news of the proposed appointment generated blowback on the right. A senior administration official said Ms. Gabbard reconsidered her choice given the criticism, and other officials confirmed the decision. Mr. Davis is a senior fellow at Defense Priorities, a think tank with funding from Charles Koch that has a number of alumni in key positions in the Trump administration. Defense Priorities has taken a skeptical view of U.S. military involvement in the Middle East and has supported Mr. Trump's efforts to reach an immediate ceasefire in the war in Ukraine. Former intelligence officials were also critical of the pick. Mark Polymeropoulos, that's a name, a former CIA operations officer and a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, said Mr. Davis's positions were outside the ideological mainstream of the Republican Party. Quote, his overt criticism of Israel and total opposition to any military action against Iran seems to run counter to current administration policy, Mr. Polymeropoulos said. Hey, man, Atlantic Council, this guy looks pretty deep state to me. I thought we were getting rid of the deep state. It's like the deep state's still welcome. Just a different part of the deep state, maybe, or maybe the same part of the deep state. Maybe they just saw Harris wasn't up to the job of starting World War III quite the way they wanted to, and they decided to go with this crew because that's about as deep state as it gets. You got the director of national intelligence is a former young global leader, director of a PSYOP unit. You got the guy in the Atlantic Council, still in good standing, having a say in who the administration picks. You got the Koch brothers think tank staffing the administration. You got a Treasury secretary who's a George Soros alumni. Looks like the deep state's doing just fine under this administration. Haven't missed a beat.
The war with Iran certainly seems on schedule to me. I don't know. It sure looks like they're pretty determined to do that. Yeah,
right on time. They might have thought Kamala didn't have the stones for it.
Yeah.
Allies of Mr. Davis had defended him and said there was no hint of anti-Semitism or opposition to Israel in his work. He is skeptical of military action when it does not directly align with American interests, they say, and troubled by the use of proxies when the United States is unwilling to put its own troops in harm's way. Apparently, he didn't get the memo. This movement is not MAGA, it's MIGA. MIGA, make Israel great again. It sounds like he's like Thomas Massey. He's make America great again. Trump's not for making America great again. He likes to make Israel great again. While Mr. Trump has repeatedly called for Palestinians to be removed from Gaza to allow it to be redeveloped into a beach resort, Mr. Davis has said the removal of people from the territory would be ethnic cleansing. How dare he? How dare he? Last I heard, the Kochs don't hire left-wing radicals, but expressing the merest human consideration for the lives of Palestinian children and saying, hey, maybe World War III with Iran is not in the best interest of the nation. That was too much. That was too much. That was too outside the boundaries. So I really have to ask, what's the difference between what you would have gotten if Harris had won? You would have gotten exactly the same pro-Israel policy. All these maniacs were ginning up war with Iran. All you get here is they don't feel a need to go out like Jake Sullivan and pretend to have human emotions and squint like Antony Blinken and pretend to feel bad about it. They just, fuck the kids. We're going to open a pizzeria.
Yeah. Or what if, God forbid, Tulsi had not been confirmed for DNI director? God damn it, we're going to the Mets for Tulsi Gabbard. God damn it, if she doesn't get through, we're going to race it. Why? Look, she picks this guy. They tell her, no, sorry, he's not maniacal enough on Israel. He's not hawkish enough on Iran. And so it's a no-go. Okay, it's a no-go. Right. This administration is owned by Israel from top to bottom.
Yep.
From top to bottom. They are completely owned by Israel. Donald Trump is a Manchurian candidate. He always was, just never for Russia, but for Israel. He is owned by Israel. The man works for Israel. He is more committed to a foreign country than he is to this country, obviously. I don't want to hear any bullshit from any of these people. I'm so sick of these fucking people. Tucker Carlson goes on this big tour about how, an American leader is, bound by his duty to represent his people. Donald Trump is Israel first, literally. It's not just a catchphrase. He literally prioritizes the interests of this foreign country over his own. And this dates back to 2016. The Nation did that great write-up about how actually, yes, there was collusion in 2016, not between the Russians and Donald Trump, but by the Israelis and Donald Trump. That's why as much as Russiagate always felt like bullshit because it was, it's not like the Trump team looked exactly innocent. There was always like, okay, there is some weird
That's
behavior
what was great
here.
about that article because it revealed like, those things you thought were kind of like, they were, but you were looking at the wrong country.
Exactly.
There really was collusion with Israel.
It just didn't trace back to Russia. It traced back to Israel. And because both parties are owned by Israel, that is a truth that will remain largely unreported for the time being. But I've never seen a politician more owned by Israel. And that's quite the statement. I mean, that is quite the statement. I mean, Richie Torres, there is stiff competition in both parties. But I've never seen someone so brazenly just kowtow to a foreign country like this. They are owned from top to bottom, so it's not a mistake that this guy couldn't get through. It's surprising that anyone had hopes for this administration. It's surprising that anyone felt like, no, they're really going to go in there and stick it to them.
5D chess.
Yeah, 5D
He's
chess.
Playing 5D chess.
Yeah.
He makes Chuck Schumer, a man who went on stage at AIPAC and contemptuously dismissed anyone who doesn't believe in the Torah, look like a moderate.
Yeah. No, it is just incredible. I've never really seen anything. People have never seen anything like it. They say I'm the most owned politician they've ever seen. And I really, in this context, this guy just spoke.
I said, Miriam, this time, could you use the smaller strap on? I'm a little sore. I just got off a flight
today. Yeah, no, it is wild. It is really wild because, when you look at this guy's statements and then you see him described as this radical, the guy is barely a moderate. The guy's not, I wouldn't even say the guy is like necessarily even anti-Israel based on those statements. He's anti-genocide and doesn't think we should risk World War III because Israel wants a war with Iran. Like, that seems fairly, that's not a radical where I come from. But no, too much for them. Really crazy. It's very, very scary because there's nothing Israel wouldn't do. We already know that. Like there's no lengths to which Israel would not go to fulfill their objectives.
No.
And when you have a president that's just completely in their pocket, it means there's nothing he won't do for them. Am I convinced Trump is going to try and keep us out of war with Iran now? No. That seems more fast-tracked than ever before. They've been signaling a war with Iran since 9/11, and I've never been more convinced it's going to happen within this presidential term than I am now. And there's been a lot of chirping about that, going back, 24 years now. But I've never been more, I won't say convinced it's going to happen because it's not a certainty, but I don't think it's ever been more likely than now.
And at this point, I've got the theory, like you would imagine the guys who are like kind of prominent in the media or podcasting space, you would think those guys, they do well with women, but usually they're pretty dark, dorky, awkward guys. I think that's why so many people who you would think would know better jump up to defend Tulsi. I think they're just pee-whipped, man. I think these are just dorky guys who are, simps for Tulsi, because you have it's never women. It's all these guys who jump out. Yeah, no, you can and good journalists. You can find Tulsi literally saying two different things on every single subject, but they all lose their minds over the Tulsi.
Crazy stuff.
They got a little crush. They got a little crush.
They're a little smitten. It happens to the best of us. What can I say? All right. Hey, folks, let's have a quick pause for a word from Rumble Premium. So this sponsorship is from Rumble, and it's one that's incredibly important to the survival of the company. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on issues like COVID, but they did. And Facebook admitted they fell to pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. Rumble did not. They held the line. They are attacked daily for giving shows like us a voice and a platform to talk to audiences like you. They're attacked in corporate media. They're attacked by governments like France. They're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. But Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers alone because they don't get many of them. So watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe in the fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium, which is the ad-free version of the Rumble platform. So join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. So go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we're of course just happy if you watch us on the platform. There we go. All right. Let's see what we did. Okay, good. Perfect. All right. Let's go to some Rumble Rants and Super Chats. Nice crowd in here tonight. 2516 in the YouTube chat. Add that to the Twitter chat, and that is, of course, good for one of these. In the year 2525. And we're at 926 likes. You know what that means? Thanks, everybody, for being here tonight. Round of applause for Jake in the booth, fielding these super chats and Rumble Rants here. EO Shush. Rubio is like Pinocchio. Every time he lies, his ears grow. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Ha, 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 ha. Maybe I should try getting a gig doing soundtracks for the pigs. Thank you, Vulture. Appreciate that, DJ Vulture. Hey, DJ, did you check your email? Because I sent you a renewal thing for your ad read package there. I don't know if you got it. Because I know we had to pause it for a little bit. So check that email, please, if you're interested. Great propaganda film. Hey, everyone, look this way. There you go. These gangs are not the real enemy. Morty Duke, thanks for the $5. Appreciate that very much. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks for the $4.99. Super sticker. Spade 2187. Didn't Joe Biden also ignore court orders? On this level, I mean, not in terms of this. I don't know if he did them. Maybe. I think we'd have heard that. I mean, he seemed pretty. He seemed to want the court to rule against most of what he did. Like, he designed his policy to be blocked by the courts. Right. Yeah, like with the student loans, he seemed to write that policy, sign those orders in ways that would make them especially vulnerable to being blocked by the courts. But there may be an example where he did. Alex Daslieb, any other Catholics get flashbacks when Rush impersonates an altar boy, but with a cowbell? There you go. Thank you, Alex Daslieb. And that was a $49.99 super chat. That is good for a cowbell. Thank you. Of course, there we go. That's the point of that. Thank you. That's very kind of you. David Santucci says, Russ is wearing my favorite T-shirt tonight. There you go. Yeah, that's cool. A good one. The Venn diagram. Let's see. Philip Blair, thanks for the $5. Even Alan Dershowitz is comparing the actions against Mahmoud Khalil with McCarthyism, but while comparing Khalil to Nazis marching in Skokie SMH. Yeah, no, even some of the maniacs think this is an overstep. Even some of the real maniacs. There was that Bloomberg reporter who's a big Israel guy. I forget his name. He thought it was an overstep as well. Washington Post wrote an editorial. Their editorial board said this is an overstep, which, I mean, that's kind of risky for them. I thought Bezos was really orienting the op-ed section in a different direction. Kuznetsky was saying it's the end of the Weimar Republic. Are we headed for the night of the long knives? Dimitri Mugianis. Hey, Russell, have you tried P&M Pizza on Amsterdam on 146th? Just discovered old school NYC pizza. Hoping I'll run into you. Great work, comrades. Yeah, that's up there.
Really? I mean, that's not that far from me.
That's actually not
146th and what? Amsterdam?
Amsterdam. Yeah. So that's actually not that far from you.
Maybe I'll try that.
P&M Pizza. There you go. All right. Okay. Let's keep on moving here. All right. What do we got next? Okay. All right, folks. So we have a Mahmoud Khalil update of a kind. The ACLU has shared footage of the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil at Columbia University last Saturday night, captured by Khalil's wife, Noor. The video shows several plainclothes agents arresting him, Mahmoud, in a residential building. As Khalil is handcuffed behind his back, the agents refuse to identify themselves, speak with Khalil's lawyer, or specify their agency. Now, as it turns out, the ICE agent who's featured here in the Avengers T-shirt, not even wearing a uniform, was a guest of honor at the 2019 State of the Union when Donald Trump welcomed him to the Congress floor. So let's take a look at some of this footage. This is pretty dystopian here.
Under arrest. So turn around.
Okay,
Stop resisting.
let's not.
Stop resisting.
Okay, he's not resisting. He's giving me his phone, okay? He's not, I understand, he's not resisting.
Put your arms
Like,
there's no use for this. Don't worry about it. You're going to have to come with us. Don't worry. I'm coming with you. Don't worry. No one's resisting. No one's getting worked up.
you guys really don't need to be doing all of that.
It's fine.
حبيبي كيف بدي اتصل فيك؟
Take Amy. Call Amy.
Okay. Hi, Amy. Yeah, they just like handcuffed him and took him. I don't know what to do.
So now she's on the phone with the lawyer.
Okay. And what should I do? I don't know. Nor. Let me ask. Can we get a name, please? Of can we get your name? I understand the lawyer is asking for your name.
Over there. We don't give our name.
The lawyer's asking for your name. He's saying they don't give their names.
Oh yeah, that's right. They'll be taken to immigration custody at 26 Federal Plaza.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
They'll be taken to immigration custody at 26 Federal Plaza.
She said they're taking him to 26 Federal Plaza. Can you please specify what agency is taking him, please? Excuse me. They're not talking.
So these are obviously relevant questions because the lawyer is obviously telling her what to ask them, and she's not getting anywhere.
Listen to me. I don't know. I don't know. Excuse me. The lawyer would like to speak to somebody. Oh my God, they're literally like running away from me. Oh my God. What if... Okay. The lawyer would like to speak with somebody. Excuse me.
Stand back.
His lawyer would like to speak with someone. I got the license plate number. Excuse me.
Hello?
They're just like, they're all ignoring me. Like, I don't... It's ridiculous. Okay. 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 This guy is like walking away from me. 1 second, he's on the phone. I'm recording everything. Yep, I'm recording everything.
No problem.
I'm sorry, excuse me, somebody needs to speak with me. His lawyer has a few questions.
Did your shoes are away?
He is represented by Amy Greer. He does have counsel.
That's New York for you. Stay out of the fucking way.
Hey, Darren, how's it going?
I need some information from you. Nobody is speaking with me. How am I supposed to get any information?
Wait in the sidewalk, please. Wait in the sidewalk.
It's fucking ridiculous. They took the phone. I don't know
For what?
I know I like don't understand. They're not like telling me anything. They just took him.
No
Fucking
Miranda
nightmare.
warnings, no charges. So if
They don't
you
even tell you who they
if
are.
if you saw this in say Venezuela, you'd be talking about dictatorship, right? Does this look like a country of laws, or does this look like what you associate with dictatorships, where people are just grabbed and disappeared off the street. And fuck you, we don't have to give you any answers. We don't have to answer any lawyers. We don't have to tell you what our names are. No
what
badges,
agency they're with,
no
what
badge
authority
number.
they have, what
Nothing.
authority they have.
Just
Nothing.
grab
Guy
a
shows
guy.
up in a comic book T-shirt and a badge and takes off with your husband. You're 8 months pregnant. Now the guy's 1,000 miles away. The guy's 1,000 miles away. This goes on for another 5 minutes. We'll have to watch. It's more of the same, and then they drive away. They don't give her any answers. Just absolutely horrible. And yes, Mahmoud Khalil was detained by ICE agent, honored by Trump at the State of the Union. So this was 6 years ago.
Tonight, by one of those law enforcement heroes, ICE Special Agent Elvin Hernandez. When Elvin
They meant to name him Elvis, but they misspelled it on the birth certificate. They decided to run with it.
Thank you. When Elvin was a boy, he and his family legally immigrated to the United States from the Dominican Republic. At the age of 8, Elvin told his dad he wanted to become a special agent. Today, he leads investigations into the scourge of international sex trafficking.
And today, 6 years later, he's disappearing student protesters from their apartments in New York City with
ripping them from the arms of their pregnant wives. Yes.
Yeah. As Russell said, that is a scene from a post-democratic country. That's what this is. And all of this stuff, all of the spectacle they make about how they're going to treat the gang members, the terrorists, the criminals, they do that so they could do it to you. It never stops there. There was never any chance it would stop there. That's why I get, look, I went out on a limb. And, in the first days of this administration, when Holman was out, with his goons checking people's papers at the Newark
Dr. Phil
commuter buses, and Dr. Phil is out there. I'm saying, this looks really fun right now. This is not good. Believe me, not good, because this is no way in hell is it going to stop here. And it hasn't. And this guy has been charged with nothing. The usual suspects were making the rounds on the Sunday shows this morning, being asked about what he's specifically being charged with, and all they respond with are vague smears of the protest movement itself, as if that is grounds to grab someone and deport them, and in the interim, move them 1,000 miles away to a right-wing jurisdiction, because he's going to get a trial that'll be more favorable, or a hearing, I should say, that'll be more favorable to what the Trump administration wants. He's being held in Louisiana because that is the jurisdiction of the country's Fifth Circuit Court, by far the most right-wing court in the country, presiding over Louisiana, Texas, and Mississippi. So he's, of course, much more likely to be deported, having his case heard there than in New York. And who is going to stop them? Who stopped them that night? It's as scary as that, man. These guys show up, they tell you what to do, and this woman is an American citizen. She's an American citizen. That doesn't matter.
Right.
He's a permanent legal resident. That doesn't matter. You have what
he
rights
has
they
a green
determine
card.
you
He's
have.
not even on a student visa.
Nope, he's not even on a student visa. Not even on a student visa, and nobody could say anything that this guy's done. Isn't that amazing? No one, when asked, what did Mahmoud Khalil do to deserve being deported? They can't say it. They can only say, well, he was the spokesperson for a movement that occupied a building. That's grounds for deportation. It is now, because what are you going to do about it?
Well, they're going full on to, they're not like the last administration that had a very similar agenda regarding student protesters. But because of who their base is, they had to play cute with it. But hey, those crackdowns at Columbia happened under Biden. But they're just not making any pretense at making a very strict, straight line between being anti-Zionist, between protesting against the policies of Israel, and being an anti-Semite.
Right.
And it is the wokest thing in the world, right? This is wokeness on steroids. There's this one protected group this one protected class that uniquely the government is willing to shred the Constitution, light the First Amendment on fire on identitarian grounds. What else do you call this? These same people are going and investigating DEI programs. What is this other than DEI on the most grand scale imaginable? If you criticize this one country, you're a bigot.
Yep, that is the way it goes right now. Steve Bertram, thanks for the $5. Some years ago, when Tulsi began speaking of the threat of Muslim extremists again, I was really confused about why. Now I understand. APAC, I'm not. Thank you, Steve Bertram. David Santucci, thanks for the $10. You know things are bad when you're rooting for the Koch brothers guy. There you go. Yes, that is true. John Freese, thanks for the $9.99. Keaton, do you have any favorite baseball announcers? Good question. Well, and look, I'm biased. I mean, I grew up a Yankee fan listening to John Sterling and Michael Kay. Now, Michael Kay left and did TV. But John Sterling, I grew up listening to John Sterling. And I know that he gets a lot of shit for his cheesy home run calls and everything, but that was the voice of my childhood into early adulthood into now. He just retired. I mean, he's almost 90, I think. So, yeah, I mean, that guy put in the time. So I have to say he is my favorite, somewhat by default, I admit. Michael Castillo, I walked to Lexington Avenue until 86th Streets, caught the 6th to Bleecker Street Pizza, 2 Nona slices, and they were amazing. Yes, the Nona slices are amazing. Indeed.
Told you.
They are good. Back from the road. Good work on the anniversary. Thanks, Back from the road. Here's some timeless poetry. You see, a pimp's love is different from that of a square. My upgrade, 2 Ds for a double dose of pimping in the classic Idiocracy. Thank you. Nina can't, so maybe Dictator on day 1 had more than 1 meeting. Maybe a handful. There you go. Thank you very much for that, Nina. All right, Jake, can we put up our scroll, please? And thank you very much. All right, folks, if you like what we do here, you can help us do more of it by becoming a member. So if you go to patreon.com/DoDissidents, you can also join our Substack at DoDissidents.substack.com, or you can, of course, join our locals. That's DoDissidents.locals.com. You have a great crowd on Rumble tonight, 1,947. Big house tonight, 1,947 on Rumble, 2,500 strong on YouTube. We really are relying on members now. Your membership is extremely important as the censors really get going. It is our membership that allows us to keep this show going. And so, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we are doing 2 segments as Rumble exclusives tonight for everybody, but available only on Rumble, one on Syria and one on Yemen. We're going to start splitting a lot more streams as the going gets tougher. And so one additional perk to membership, in addition to the normal perks that we're going to be adding, is we're going to be uploading ad-free versions of the entire live streams to Rumble the following day. Those will be unlisted private Rumble links that will be emailed to paid subscribers. So one more perk of becoming a paid subscriber is you'll get ad-free versions of the full episodes the day after they stream. That, in addition to, of course, your name up in lights here on the show credits, you also get 2 bonus live streams per month. I believe we're doing a supporter stream this week. We'll have more info for that on Tuesday. But you get 2 bonus live streams per month, 1 movie club live stream, and 1 content plus call-in live stream. So both of our bonus live streams per month are interactive. And so we try our best to make it as worthwhile as we possibly can for you. Your membership is what keeps this show afloat. And so DoDissidents.locals.com is where you go to sign up. You can also sign up by clicking that bright red join button. If you're watching on Rumble, click that bright red join button underneath the video player, and that'll take you right to our locals page. Thank you all very much. Our members are, of course, the backbone of the show. We could not do it without you. All those perks for just $5 a month. Oh, shush. I could see Post Malone get mistakenly accused of being a gang member, yes, and then deported. So let's see the policy happen for a while and then judge. Fun fact, Post Malone, actually, when I was living in Newburgh, his flight his plane had to make, I think, an emergency landing at Stewart Airport. in Newburgh, my hometown. It was a big deal around the area. Hillary Hinton, as a Russian asset, I just want to go on record that I'm available for positions in the cabinet. There's even video of me getting peed on. Will work for Borscht. Thank you, Hillary Hinton. Appreciate that very much. Morty Duke, wanton violence. The Chinese are definitely behind this violence. I know. That's one of Russell's quirks. He says it. He says wanton. He pronounces it wonton. It was funny because there was one time when we were doing a segment about a Chinese comedian who was jailed for a joke, and that word was used. And I said, it's wanton, not wonton. All right. Thutmosel, why didn't you guys cover the massacres against the Alawites by the CIA-funded al-Nusra in Syria, or did I miss it? It's coming up on the Rumble side of this evening's show, so we will get there.
And the reason we didn't get to it sooner is we were trying to get a specific guest that we did not get, so we're just going.
Exactly. We're doing it anyway. Fuck it, do it live. Exactly. All right. Führer von der Leyen, United States of Israel. Are we shocked? No, we are not. Thank you very much. David Santucci, I'm old enough to remember Phil Rizzuto, Keaton. Oh, I remember Phil Rizzuto, but he was the TV guy. He was not radio. Phil Rizzuto was Pix 11.
Yeah.
He was Channel
Pix
11.
11, yep.
Yep. Holy cow.
I remember Phil Rizzuto.
Yep. He was the holy cow. Yep. So, yes, Phil Rizzuto, great announcer. But, yeah, he was not radio. He was TV.
When I lived in Chicago, I was never a baseball.
Oh, actually,
fan,
John Freese didn't mention radio. Sorry, I interpreted that as a radio announcer. So, actually, that was my mistake. I assume John Freese meant radio announcer, but I would have to say John Sterling anyway, just because he was the most consistent throughout the most years. Sorry, go ahead.
When I was living in Chicago, there were rumors that Harry Carey hired women to shit on his face.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot speak to the truth of those rumors.
I don't know anything about that.
You hear all kinds of things.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, we are going to be going to Rumble soon. Not yet. If you want to head over there now, you can do dissidents.com/Rumble. But we do have one more here on the YouTube side, and that is, of course, the marquee segment of the evening, Darryl Cooper and Joe Rogan.
Oh, our old friend Darryl Cooper is at it again. So he did an interview with Joe Rogan that I got to say was so batshit that I've had a lot of people who had argued with us about Darryl Cooper come to me and say, okay, I see your point. Right. So this is the thing that's probably making the most rounds. He talks about Hitler's upbringing and where he grew up and Mein Kampf and how little attention you should really pay to Mein Kampf. So we'll play that and discuss.
Did Hitler start going after the Jews?
You mean in terms of
rhetoric?
The war? So yeah, like if you take him at his word in Mein Kampf, which is, it's a piece of political propaganda, that he wrote as a sort of a politician in Germany in 1924, and so you have to take it with sort of a grain of salt, but it's also one of the few sources we have. And given his audience at the time, he probably didn't have a lot of reason to make this part up.
Take Mein Kampf with a grain of salt.
Yeah, like what are you trying to say?
It's not like he actually did any of that stuff. It's
not like Okay, so since we're paused, all right. So he's kind of suggesting that Mein Kampf is not determinative of Hitler's agenda. You should take it with a grain of salt. So this is Hitler in 1919. This is a letter he wrote. Yeah. Everything that makes the people strive for higher goals, be it religion, socialism, or democracy, is to the Jew merely a means to an end, the way to satisfy his greed and thirst for power. The results of his works is racial tuberculosis of the nation. And this has the following consequences. Purely emotional anti-Semitism finds its final expression in the form of pogroms. Rational anti-Semitism, by contrast, must lead to a systematic and legal struggle against and eradication of the privileges the Jews enjoy over the other foreigners living among us, alien laws. Its final objective, however, must be the total removal of all Jews from our midst. Sounds like he was pretty clear on what his goals were, and he had great follow through on those goals. You got to give it to him. He was saying in 1919, this is what he was going to do. So what he means by take Mein Kampf with a grain of salt I leave that to the interpretation of our viewers.
Is that, he had been from like small town Germany, right? And he was from a middle class family. His father was a civil servant, respectable people, and nationalism back then was very much like a middle class ideology. And the middle class people, nationalists, would complain about the workers and the proletariat, how they all want to be socialists, and none of them have any national feeling and everything. And Hitler really didn't grow up with any really even knowledge of the Jews. He says his father, he never heard him say the word, and if they had any in the small town that he lived in, like, they were apparently well assimilated because he didn't know about them. And so then he moves to Vienna when he's a young adult, and there's a lot of Jews in Vienna. And he starts to, he's at the bottom of society now. He's literally living in shelters. He's hungry all the time. He's like down with the underclass after having grown up in the middle class. And so he's starting to get a look at what the German people, the German masses, that he's like sort of as a child and a young man is like worked up this deep sense of like nationalistic fervor. He's actually getting an up close look at the underclass in Vienna, and what he sees is not particularly impressive, which is often the case when you can have sympathy for and want to lift up the underclass in any society, but the reason you want to do that is because they're often living degraded lives in degraded circumstances. And so he gets an up close look at this, and he doesn't like what he sees. And he says in Mein Kampf that it really caused him like a moral crisis, an ideological crisis. He's like, are these the German people? Like, really? This is what we're talking about? And then he says, and this is the way he relates it. He says it was actually the key that unlocked everything else for him, is that he would say he realized, we could say he came to believe that, yes, these German masses, they are in a sorry state right now, but the reason for that is that they're being manipulated by the Jews.
Okay. Cooper doesn't even know which country Hitler was born in. Quote, Hitler grew up in a small town in Germany. Hitler did not grow up in a small town in Germany. He grew up in Austria. Hitler moves to Vienna. He's starting to get a closer look at the German people, the German masses. Vienna is not in Germany. It's Austria. I know that Americans can be geographically challenged, but for goodness sakes, this guy is supposed to be a World War II historian. He is someone who has a large following and is platformed by the likes of Rogan and Tucker Carlson. People take him seriously. Goodness knows why. And this from Bill Marsh. I suppose if you accept Hitler's contention that Austria does not exist, it is really German, then it would be correct. Then again, don't tell that to my grandmother, one half Austrian. It would make her mad, and you wouldn't like her when she's mad. Mein Kampf was started in 1923 and published in 1925, not 1924. It was a manifesto, not propaganda. Hitler was radicalized in the army, not by observing the working class. Is there nothing this guy can get right? Not much. Not much. Okay, so you might say that's a little nitpicky, but he goes on to explain that in order to not run afoul of the German people, Hitler was very careful not to express his anti-Semitism in his speeches.
It's not like Hitler was going and giving big speeches at City Square in Berlin, going on and on and on about how we're going to kill the Jews. And the German people said, right on, like, let's go do it. That was like the speeches that are out there where he is talking about the Jewish question, like almost all of those are like internal Nazi party, like rally speeches, they're not him. He had to be careful about that. Like in 1938, which is pretty far down the line when Kristallnacht happened. It was kind of a nationwide pogrom against the Jews in Germany that was launched primarily by Goebbels, the propaganda minister. But there was outrage in the German cities. People in Berlin, a lot of the places were outraged by what was going on. And Hitler had to actually get on the phone with Goebbels and say, cut this shit out. Like, this is not good. Like, not because he loves the Jews all of a sudden, obviously, but because this is bad propaganda. People are.
Okay. All right. So, and I just want to say, and this is very typical of Cooper, it's pretty well known that the Nazis never won more than 1/3 of the vote in Germany.
Right.
So this is not, he will very often present commonplace understandings as if he's revealing some hidden truth about Germany. It's very well known by anyone with even a passing interest in the subject that most of the German people did not support the Nazis. They never won the popular vote in an election. But he's conflating that with his own interpretations, his own opinions, and his own spin, which is completely inaccurate. So Hitler gave multiple, this is a community note he got on this, Hitler gave multiple anti-Semitic speeches prior to chancellorship. There are only two, this is a quote from 1922, there are only two possibilities, either victory of the Aryan or annihilation of the Aryan and the victory of the Jew. Now, somebody pointed this out, referring to the same speech. Hitler first called Jews a pestilence in a public address in 1922, but please keep giving this pseudo-historian a platform. Now, he actually responded to this. Such a disingenuous liar. First, the quoted phrase in the post you're quoting didn't come from my mouth. Goldman made it up. Second, Hitler was not a major public figure in 1922. He was talking to beer halls full of street toughs who would form the core of the SA, not large crowds in central Berlin, which is what I actually said. The whole point of that segment was that most German people weren't supporting him due to his anti-Semitism, and he well understood that he needed to tone it down in front of mass audiences. Take it from Ian Kershaw or John Toland if you won't take it from me. Okay, so first of all, the fact that most of the German people did not support the Nazis does not necessarily mean it was because of the Nazis' anti-Semitism that they didn't support them. The Nazis had a lot of reasons for respectable middle-class people not to want to support them, aside from their anti-Semitism. But aside from that, he's saying, no, he kept that on the DL. Well, 1920, he gives a speech titled, Why Are We Anti-Semites? To 2,000 people. That doesn't sound like a few SA guys in a beer hall. 2,000 people. The speech was interrupted 58 times by cheering. Doesn't sound like he was keeping it on the DL. Now, I will give him this.
He was doing Netanyahu numbers with those ovations.
I'll give him this. It wasn't in Berlin. It was in Munich. What did he say? If we wish to make these social reforms, this must go hand in hand with the fight against the enemy of every social institution, Jewry. Here, too, we know that scientific knowledge can only be the groundwork, but that behind this knowledge must stand an organization which one day will be able to go over into action. And in this action, we will remain adamant, which means removal of Jews from amongst our people, not because we begrudge them their existence. We congratulate the rest of the world on account of their visits. See, Hitler had comedy, man. He had comedy. Something people don't dwell on a lot about him. But because we value the existence of our own people 1,000 times higher than that of an alien race. And since we are convinced that this scientific anti-Semitism that clearly recognizes the terrible danger of this race for any people can only be a guide, and the masses will always perceive them emotionally, for they know the Jew first and foremost as the man in daily life who always and everywhere sticks out. Our concern must be to arouse in our people the instinct against Jewry and whip it up. Okay, so that's to 2,000 people in 1920, 58 cheers. That doesn't sound like the German people were not well aware of Hitler's views. He also wrote a book about it. Mein Kampf that was
Yeah.
published and available. Now, the other thing he says is at the time of Kristallnacht, he's calling up Goebbels. You got to knock it off because the Germans don't like it. Well, that's weird because a couple of months later, in 1939, he's giving his prophecy speech in Berlin. This is January 30th. Quote, if international finance Jewry inside and outside Europe should succeed in plunging the nations once more into a world war, the result will be not the Bolshevization of the earth and thereby the victory of Jewry, but the annihilation of the Jewish race in Europe. So this is January 30th, 1939, Kristallnacht, which he claims was deeply offensive, so offensive to the German people that Hitler had to tell Goebbels to tone it down. So what happened in the intervening 2 months? Did the Germans all of a sudden become amenable to Hitler's anti-Semitism? For some reason, did he all of a sudden feel that it was going to play better 2 months later? Or is Darryl Cooper completely full of shit, talking out of his ass and pushing an ethno-state agenda, as we will see later, that makes him deeply sympathetic to Nazi Germany? Because I think you can make a very good case if you look at the totality of his statements. He can't come out and say this because even Rogan would not be able to have him on if he did. His problem is not with the idea of what Hitler wanted to do. It's the way he went about it. He believes very much in the idea that people should be able to live within their own enclaves and within their own culture, and that cultures are degraded by the introduction of outsiders and foreigners. He just doesn't like the way that he did it. He thinks he made mistakes in his tactics. That's why he feels the need to minimize Mein Kampf and what it meant. Feels like he should have done it differently. But he can't say that. If he says that, even Joe Rogan can't have him on. So, do you have anything?
Well, no, I mean, look, I mean, it's just all of a piece. I mean, the first time we heard about this guy, you were recommended him by some people who tweeted at you. And, just a few minutes into that Tucker thing, I texted you back. I said, it just kind of seems like this guy loves Hitler. What is the, what's interesting about this? Yeah, that's the thing that really offended me about it the first time, was just the stupidity of it. And the pretense of it. Like somehow he's this edgelord. He's the edgelord because what makes him edgy is that he clearly likes Hitler. Like, that's what makes him edgy. The content itself is not edgy. Most of what he says is either not true or common knowledge. Right.
Exactly.
Like, he's edgy in the way that RFK is edgy. Like, most of the stuff that RFK says that's correct is obvious. Hey, like, shitty food is bad for you. Right? And then most of everything else he says is bullshit.
Exactly. Yeah, you have your people who like him because they are white nationalists or Nazis, and we got rid of most of those. Then you have the people, which this is almost sadder, who have a deep sunk cost fallacy about this fucking podcast that they listen to, that they just can't give up. If they admit that this guy has no idea what he's talking about, well, then they wasted 16 hours of their lives and they have to go out and do some real research.
Right.
Listen, I'm sure the podcast is very entertaining. He's a very eloquent speaker. There's a difference between entertainment and education. Once somebody says something like, they killed all the Russians because they just didn't bring enough food and it was more humane, you don't need to listen to 16 hours of the person's podcast.
Right.
I'm sure there are things that are true in there. I'm sure, very much like his interviews, it's mixed with his opinion, and it's mixed with total bullshit, and it's mixed with inflating a source to be more determinative of what actually happened than it is. Assuming you're not an expert, that's why you listen to a podcast like that, right? You're going to an expert because you want to absorb the truth. If you can't trust the person, why would you listen to it? Because you're going to come away not knowing what you heard that's true and not true. There are very good experts in this field. Look, right behind me, Elon Pape. You don't have time to read. I'd be surprised if his stuff is not on audiobooks.
Right.
So moving along. All right. So he kind of addresses the whole Churchill was the chief villain of World War II controversy from his now infamous Tucker Carlson interview. So this is what he said.
I mean, the interesting thing about the World War II question is something I found through talking to people who, disagreed with my Tucker interview is, like, if you put the question to them, and maybe if you put it directly like this, they would give you a different answer, but you kind of get you get to understand that this is how they feel about it, which is if there was two options, one of them is that the Second World War doesn't happen, at least in Europe. 40 million people don't get killed. But, the National Socialists stay in power and, maybe Hitler dies 10 years later, like the Soviet Union, Stalin dies, and things move on. People really kind of feel like, and maybe this is because they're not involved in it, like 40 million dead people that was a cost worth paying. And I think that is completely insane, man. Like,
Hitler, he probably would have taken up painting. He probably would have been into realism. I can't imagine him really getting into surrealism. He's making all of these assumptions about what would have happened if he hadn't gone into the war that not only is pulling out of thin air, but really don't conform to Hitler's own stated aims. While it is true that Hitler thought that the British Empire and the German Reich should divide the world between them. So if he had stuck to this vision, and given that he showed an incredible consistency from 1919 all the way through his career, we'll take him at his word that he felt the British were Aryans and that they should divide the world between them, that he would not have invaded England, that he would have gone to the east, something that Darryl Cooper completely avoids. He would have expanded into the east, which he saw as Lebensraum, as the natural territory of Germany. That's their natural possession, and the Slavs are an inferior people that need to either be wiped out or enslaved by the Aryans. So the idea that if Churchill had not fought Hitler, that would have been the end of it. And Hitler just would have lived, quietly for the next 10 years? There would have been no more violence. What it is, there's this rabid Russophobia and anti-communism that is very typical of a certain kind of right-wing ideologue. He doesn't really give a shit what Hitler would have done to the Russians. He only cares about what Hitler did to the white people, what he considers the white people, the northern people, the good people, the Europeans. He doesn't, very much like Hitler himself, he doesn't really see the Slavs as worthy of that kind of consideration.
Yeah, no, he'd have no doubt have killed tens of millions more, obviously. And look, he just says it right there. He said this last time. He said that the Allies should have surrendered after Dunkirk, which implies he wishes Hitler had won the war. And now here he's saying that the war wasn't worth fighting because, the whole thing would have blown over anyway.
Right. 10 years, he would have died. It would have been all right.
Yeah.
You would have just had a permanent racist German Reich governing a huge swath of the Eurasian continent. It would have been fine.
And why does he assume he would have died in 10 years? What was he, 56 when he died? So he would have been 66, which was about the average age, I think, for someone who was born in that
the
time.
Best health care.
Right, but he could have lived longer than the average person.
Of course.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. He would have gotten the best health care.
Exactly.
Why do you think he would have been dead in 10 years?
Yeah, I think he's going off of...
Why would that have made things okay? Even if he died in 10 years, he would have had Goebbels succeed him or one of the other goons in his circle.
Yeah.
It's
an interesting take on Hitler. He probably would have died soon anyway.
Probably would have died soon anyway. What would the big deal have been? Let him exterminate the Jews and the Russians. It would have been fine. So then, all right. So this is really where he gives away the game, and I think this is where a lot of people get confused about him because they don't understand how he could support a Palestinian state and a Jewish state and also have this obvious sentimentality about Nazi Germany. But it's completely consistent if you listen to what he says about ethnic neighborhoods, ethnic enclaves, about immigration, He speaks sympathetically about blacks in South Central Los Angeles being displaced by Latinos. He speaks of how according to him, not white Lithuanians in Marquette who hit MLK in the head with a brick had a point because they had established themselves in that neighborhood and were protecting it from outsiders. I've never called him anti-Semitic per se. I think he's a crackpot who believes very deeply a place for all people and all people in their place. If you're black people and you want to keep anybody who's not black out of your community, well, that's fine. But you have to think through, okay, so what does that mean when a guy who's white as milk says that? What does he think about white neighborhoods and white countries? This is not an unusual view of white supremacists. I would argue the idea of genocidally exterminating everyone else on earth would be the exception rather than the rule. This idea of walling off ethnic and cultural units into their own place and putting everyone else in their places, I would say that's probably more common to your average Nazi or KKK member. Okay, so he gets into this a bit in this podcast. So somebody commented on it. Play the video first. All right, so he's talking about the Naturalization Act of 1790 here.
Naturalization law. I think it was the first naturalization law on the books in the United States, 1798. And you see a lot of like racialist types point to this as if it kind of backs up their idea of what, of what America's history is and what it should be, because it says all white persons of good character, all free white persons of good moral character, if you come to the United States, can become a citizen. And people see that and they focus on the white part and they say, see, they wanted America to be a white country or whatever. That is totally the wrong way to understand that law. I mean, if you were to go to like France or Germany or England or whatever, for them to pass a law that said anybody in the continent, any European, you guys can come over here and we will make you a citizen with the full legal rights and privileges of our richest citizen. You will be an equal citizen. You can just come here. Radically open. I mean, really like a revolutionarily open kind of law, especially back then. You got to remember, like, the Europeans still had another 150 years of just wantonly slaughtering each other, left still ahead of them. You had like today, I mean.
Okay. All right. So he's arguing that this act that declared the United States open to white Europeans for citizenship exclusively was actually not racist for its time. It was radically open. But that's actually not really the most interesting part. It's the way he applies it to now. So somebody took exception to this formulation or misinterpreted it. I like Darryl, but he is wrong about the Naturalization Act of 1790. Yes, it was obviously radical in that it included every European ethnic group as citizens, but it was exclusionary to non-Europeans, as the rest of our immigration policy was up until 1965. Put this way, that's not true. Put this way, America was the first white nationalist country to exist. And that, the fact that this person's saying that is a good example of the kind of ignorant audience that Cooper depends upon. We did not limit citizenship to white Europeans until 1965. That's not true.
Right.
Put this way, America was the first white nationalist country to exist. The prime reason we continue to have internal ethnic strife is because we are importing too many people that are genetically too far apart from us. Importing Italians and importing Indians are not the same thing and never will be. The 1924 Immigration Act was the correct one, and for anyone unfamiliar, so very much like now, there was an enormous anti-immigrant backlash in the late teens and 20s. But at that time, it was against Southern Europeans and Eastern Europeans. So in 1924, they created an immigration law that limited immigration to, I don't remember the exact number, something like 2% of the total population as represented in the 1880 census. So essentially what that meant is no more Southern and Eastern European, because who was in the country in large numbers in 1880? It would have been Northern Europeans predominantly. And that wasn't completely reformed until 1965. That's really what he's mixing up there. So Cooper actually answers him. The main reason the law was restricted to whites was not to prohibit mass third world immigration, because no one at the time could have conceived of such a thing even being taken seriously. It was to keep states from gaming the system by including blacks and Indians as citizens to goose their electoral representation, and to keep the Spanish and French from driving all their non-white subjects into the U.S. states. The point I'm trying to develop is that from the beginning, America had to be radically open if we were ever going to conquer and settle this continent. But by the 1960s, it had become a deeply embedded moral imperative that we couldn't switch off when the global South started arriving. And I think that ethic got exported to the European countries under U.S. influence. So he's telling you right here that he believes in a white ethno-state. He's saying the problem with America is we misinterpreted our openness to all kinds of Europeans to mean that we need to be open to all kinds of people. And then we exported that ideal to Europe, who then allowed non-Europeans into their countries. He could not be more clear. Well, actually, he could be more clear. Do you really see no difference between assimilating European Christians and trying the same with great masses of people from the global South? Our failure to assimilate our native black population should have been a warning.
You're talking to me all wrong. It's the wrong tone.
No, this is not a guy who would be sympathetic to the core project of Nazism at all. At all. This is not at all why he's obsessed with rehabilitating the Nazis while claiming to disavow them so that he keeps getting invited on podcasts. Darryl. The lesson of the Jews in the 40s and of the Palestinians in the years since is that every people needs a state dedicated to their interests, and those who don't will be forever vulnerable to abuse by those who do. That's it right there. This is why he could be sympathetic to Israel and also like the idea of Nazi Germany, because they're both ethno-states. He likes the idea and that the Palestinians should have a state. It's not about anti-Semitism. He's a crackpot. So somebody responded to him, somebody a little more racist than him. That might be true, but do you honestly believe that renegotiating our national identity is the equivalent when doing it with Europeans versus the global South? And he answers, of course not. Trying to do it with the non-Euro, non-Christian masses has disordered our collective identity, possibly beyond repair. Now, I know there are going to be people who watch this clip who like the language he's talking, and okay. I think there are a lot of people who just cannot give up that they listened to a crackpot's podcast for 16 hours and came away thinking they learned about the Middle East that way. They just let it go, man. Let it go. Yes, you spent a lot of time listening to a weirdo, freak, white supremacist moron about a very complex history that you certainly could find, as you can see on the shelf behind me, better sources for.
Yeah, hey, look, we spent a lot of time listening to Bernie Sanders, you know. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it doesn't. Let it go. Let it go. Leave it to the Nazis. If you're not a Nazi, you don't need to be listening to this guy. All right, so finally, just one more example of the kind of buttons he pushes and the kind of accuracy you can expect from him. This historian, Darryl Cooper, went on Joe Rogan and claimed, quote, "This isn't like a conspiracy theory. Ireland is on track to be minority Irish by like 2070. Yes, it is a conspiracy theory. He should try reading more before talking." So let's hear him. Let's hear him talk.
Look it up. This isn't like a conspiracy theory. It's the first things that come up on Google if you look it up. That, you know, Ireland is on track to be minority Irish by like 2070 or something like that. It's like, I don't like that. People think of diversity as like every place on the planet should look like Jackson Heights in New York, and like then we're diverse. But to me, that's not diversity at all. Diversity is I go to Ireland and it's Irish.
I don't know who represents Jackson Heights in Congress, but they should really do something about this guy because he's really got a thing about Jackson Heights. Heights. Okay, so what he said is total bullshit. So, not surprisingly, just under 3.9 million, this is in the last census in 2022 in Ireland. Just under 3.9 million, or 77% of people, identified their ethnic group or background as white Irish. The next largest ethnic group was any other white background at 10%, followed by Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi at 2%, and black or black Irish at 1%. So 87% of people in Ireland in the 2022 census were white. 77% of that being white Irish. So here from the poster Danny Boy, in terms of the most recent intercensal progression, it looked like this. Born on this island, 2011, 5,367,374 of 6,392,132, 84% born on the island in 2011. By 2022, it had dropped to 82.5%. If that relative decrease continued, persons born on this island would become a minority in the year 2318. So, he said it's not a conspiracy theory, but it sounds like a conspiracy theory. And hey, we've been sympathetic to the idea that in many countries, I'm not an expert on the situation in Europe and the numbers, but I live in America. I've always been of the opinion that they could have stopped immigration at the border if they wanted to, and that they were trying to destabilize the labor market. I'm not saying there's absolutely nothing going on in certain countries. I can't speak to Ireland specifically, but in certain places, at the very least, they mismanaged immigration and ignored legitimate concerns where they arose. That's all true. But Darryl Cooper is playing on that to stir up racial animus in people that is far beyond the scale of the problem that he's describing, as you can see from the numbers here.
Yeah, and most of these podcast hosts who crawl up his ass are doing the same thing for exactly the same reason. They have no class analysis of this at all. Right. There is no class component to this that is going to be solved through any right-wing political movement. I mean, if amnesty for white South African farmers doesn't give away their motivation, I don't know what does.
Yeah,
like this is clearly not about labor to the people who are pushing this most loudly. I'm not saying there's not a component. I'm not saying there's no material component to the issue. That's clearly not the button being pushed, because that's clearly not where the movement is coming from, at least from the top. Obviously.
Right. Well, they want to get you angry at everybody except the billionaires robbing you and not paying any taxes.
Of course.
Yeah. And everybody else. You could get angry at anyone except rich people. Right. Everyone except rich people. So, hey, a lot of the people who would support Darryl Cooper, they're very fond of calling people snowflakes who won't debate, who won't back up their arguments, who won't sit with, non-friendly interviewers. But Darryl Cooper is probably the biggest snowflake around, I can imagine, at his level. He literally will not sit down with anyone who knows anything about the subjects that he misrepresents for a profession. For example, a British outlet asked me to debate literally Andrew Roberts, Baron of Belgravia, member of the House of Lords, and author of a whole shelf of books in my library, including the best one on Napoleon about last week's controversy, referring to the Tucker Carlson interview. Hi, thanks, but you are crazy, haha. As much as it would be an honor to meet one of my favorite historians, even in a hostile setting, and with a stack of misconceptions about what I think and who I am, you know a good way to clear up those misconceptions? Sit down with them.
Right.
Sit down and explain what the misconceptions are. I've read enough of Mr. Roberts' books to know how that would go for me. Okay? That's the most honest thing I've ever heard him say. Perhaps I'll take you up on it after I've finished my upcoming podcast series on the topic. Don't hold your breath, folks. And my thoughts are more fleshed out and organized, though I imagine, or at least hope, that all this will have died down to the point that there'd be little interest. Well, not much chance of that. So it isn't just Lord Andrew Roberts that Darryl Cooper is scared of. Even rando podcast hosts who say things like, the idea that Darryl Cooper, well, this is what he tweeted. Would everyone still be rallying around Mahmoud Khalil if his name was Otto Schultz and he'd been demonstrating for the view that Winston Churchill was the chief villain of World War II? To which I responded, the idea that Darryl Cooper isn't a half-bright Nazi apologist of the kind you'll find in bar rooms and barber shops all over the country is the load-bearing myth his career depends on. And lo and behold, boom, blocked.
So now we're both blocked. So I guess that's the end of the line.
That's the well, I have a burner. I can still,
I can still read his stuff. Now when they block you, sometimes you could still see their stuff.
You
could
still see their stuff. I could interact from my burner. I mean, I don't have a reason to. But hey, man, this guy is an expert. And then you have people now, because apparently, I guess he says I'm not a historian. Okay, well then why are you taking him seriously? You can't have it both ways. You can't tell me, nah, man, this guy, he really knows what he's talking about, and then when you call him out on misrepresenting the fact, say he never said he was a historian. Okay, so then why are you supposed to listen to him?
Yeah.
Like why are you? If you just want to be entertained, I get that. That's like Saving Private Ryan, right? Like you don't watch that to learn about World War II. You watch that for entertainment, and there will be some things that overlap with facts about World War II, but it's not about World War II as a historical document. If you view it that way, you find them entertaining, I get that. But if you're building your worldview around somebody who is constantly wrong on the facts, is constantly distorting things, even where he might be representing something that's truthful, his interpretation is completely insane. And he has very well demonstrated that his vision of the world is a place for everyone and everyone in their place, which is historically illiterate on its own premise. You're arbitrarily deciding this is British culture at a moment of cultural fusion. On the Eurasian continent, there is no such thing as a culture that has not taken ideas and concepts from other culture. It's in our music. It's in our language. It's in our clothing. It's in our math. Like, what are you going to give back gunpowder? Like, where does the pure British culture and French culture start and end? You can't find it because there has been, for the entire history of civilization, cross-pollination across Eurasia. There is no such thing as this pure culture unto itself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, look, I mean, it's a sad scene. If you're going to be this sort of like half-assed contrarian edgelord, if you're going to try to pull that off, World War II is a very difficult topic to try and pull that off with, because it's easily the most studied historical event of the 20th century. The anti-Semitism, and racism, and not just racism, but the genocidal intent of Hitler and the Nazis is among the most well-documented facts of the 20th century. Right. So it's very difficult to pull off this sort of edgelord contrarian thing on a topic like this, which has been so thoroughly studied. The first interview, which we actually watched the whole thing of with Tucker, was basically he's repackaging the basic historical truth that the Nazis would not have come to power had Germany not been so harshly punished after World War I. I mean, that's pretty much it's a very commonly held opinion. I would argue that's the mainstream opinion.
We demonstrated when we covered it that his villain of World War II, Churchill, wrote that several years before the war.
Right.
That the reparations had driven the Germans to Nazism.
Well, of course. That is not only a widely held opinion. I would argue that's a mainstream opinion. I would argue you're probably on the fringe if you don't believe that, right? But what gives him his audience is that he does not criticize Adolf Hitler in the way that most people feel he deserves to be criticized because he was a genocidal racist. He calls that a load-bearing myth. Now, he doesn't go straight up into denialism, but he calls it a myth in the sense that it's a story we tell ourselves in very simple terms, and that our failure to look into that explains our incuriosity about war in general. He tries to make a big philosophical point by repackaging and sort of, putting a frankly, yes, a Nazi sympathetic perspective on some basic historical facts. That's his shtick. Right. That's why people know him, because that's his angle. His angle is he's the popular historian who likes Hitler. And, Nazis can't come out and say that they like Hitler because it's not acceptable to do so.
Right.
So they always package it in some weird, clever way.
Right.
Well, it's not that I like what he did, but he was forced into it, and a lot of it was an accident with the Russian POWs. I mean, it was just obvious nonsense from the start of it. I couldn't believe that so many people thought so much of this. I mean, when you sent it to me, I'm like, really? We're gonna do this? This guy just seems like a guy who loves Hitler.
Well, and then it was even more shocking that we had so many people who were that fucking stupid watching us. I honestly, I was very surprised. I was very surprised. Right from the beginning, he says in the Tucker interview, the way people commonly understand this is that the German people were, they were normal and cultured, and then all of a sudden they went crazy for a few years and they were fine again. And obviously,
as if that's a common understanding.
Literally nobody in the history of the world ever said that.
Right.
Nobody's ever. The question of why the Germans turned to Nazism, how Germany, this cultured, civilized society, turned to that, is arguably the most studied subject in history. It is arguably the single most studied question of history. Your audience, you have to be relying on having an audience so fundamentally ignorant of the most basic conversations around this subject, or any subject really, that you can say something like that without being written off by that audience. And he's right. He's right. His audience is that ignorant.
Indeed. All right. China Shell, just missing the black bag on the head. Thank you, China Shell. John Freese, I was thinking radio or TV. Who are your favorites in both categories? Who does the best play-by-play versus color commentary? Well, I'm always biased toward the Yankees because that's what I grew up listening to. I mean, Vin Scully was great. It was a very nostalgic sort of lyrical quality of his. So he was great. Bob Uecker, I liked a lot from Major League. That's how I got to know him. Color commentary? Yeah, man. I mean, I'm biased. Michael Kay and John Sterling were a great team in the booth. Michael Kay did the color commentary most of the time. Hey, if you want to have some great laughs, sports talk radio, listen to this guy, Craig Carton. Just put into YouTube Craig Carton, Susan Waldman, John Sterling. He did some amazing impressions of the eccentric Yankees announcers. So look into that, John Freese. You'll like that. Philip Blair, thanks for the $10. Father Coughlin was openly defending Hitler's anti-Jewish bigotry on the radio to tens of millions of Americans speaking English, including in 1938. These Coughlin broadcasts are on YouTube, unedited, WTF. Yep. Sarah, thanks for the $5. He also talks about medieval international Jewry wrong and totally erases how they were kicked out of England, France, and Spain. He knows Nothing. The Yuppies, thanks for the $10 in the comment section of the Rogan video. There's a lot of genuine anti-Semitism. Well, yeah, I mean, most of the people who defend him eventually, I mean, and by eventually, I mean like 2 or 3 replies in, just kind of like reveal what's motivating them. And oddly enough, I agree with Russell. Like, I don't think he's so much an anti-Semite as he is just an affirmative Hitler lover. Like, he likes Hitler more than he dislikes Jews or any group, you know? Conflict as an excuse to just let it all fly. These are scary times, indeed. Hitler was a gamer, says Mr. Fancy Pants. Thank you. Israel behaves like animals with no remorse. APAC, thank you. Peter Poletti. Olivia Johnson, thanks for the 99 cents. Olivia Johnson, thanks for the $4.99. My BF told my sister's boyfriend told me only 200,000 were killed in the Holocaust. Yeah, I know. There's a lot on that. Yeah, there's a lot of, people who spread that number around. I've heard that too. He's on Twitter often, and I don't know where he heard this, but Darryl is helping increase these ideas. Well, yeah, that's the thing. They play fast and loose with all that stuff. Yeah. Indeed. They play footsie with a lot of that. All right, folks. Hey, we're going to go over to Rumble. We're going to take the rest of our Rumble rants, and we still have 2 more segments to go tonight, and they are, I think, some of the more pressing segments of the evening, but we're going to do them where we can do them the right way. So dodissidents.com/Rumble. Please make your way on over there right now. We got a big crowd over here on YouTube.
And I put together a fun intermission, lots of Nazis, but to comic effect.
There we go.
It's a fun intermission. It has a little bit of everything. A little Trump satire, a little Elon satire, a little Harold and Maude.
Nice. Excellent. All right, folks. So, dodissidents.com/Rumble. That'll take you over to this current stream. So please head over there right now. You're not going to want to miss the remainder of this show. These segments will probably remain on Rumble exclusively, is my guess, which is where a lot of our content is going to be in these scary and censorious times. So please make your way on over there. dodissidents.com/Rumble. We'll take a 5-minute break to give you guys a chance to all head over to the Rumble side, and then we will take your calls. So callers, please hold off on calling for now. Please do not populate the line yet because we still have more segments which are kind of tech intensive. We will give you guys the green light when to call in because we do have a Q&A coming up right after these segments. But for now, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We will see you over there, dodissidents.com/Rumble. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Until then, be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.